Okay, good morning. My name is Yves Wantens. I represent the Flemish government in the US and in Quebec on a diplomatic level. And welcome today to Flanders House, where we welcome all of you. Flanders House comprises of 3 units. We have our diplomatic delegation, we have our economic and investment office, and we also have our tourism office. And today is a special day because we can host you today on the 11th of July, which is Flanders National Day. I won't take you too long into history, but it was one of the few times we beat the French more than 700 years ago. Of you in your own language, and we have quite a few languages today. So, pour les gens du Québec, bonjour et bienvenue. For the Spanish-speaking people, bienvenido, buenos dias. For our Catalan friends, benvingut, in particular, Dona Seret, y gracias, bons dias. And then our Basque friends, Egon Ona, and Ongi Etori. And then last but not least, actually 2 more, buongiorno e benvenuto. En dan voor de Vlaamse mensen, welkom en een goede morgen aan iedereen van u. We're very happy to host the event today, together with our colleagues from Regions4, as part of one of the side events of the UN High-Level Political Forum, which started yesterday. It's not my task to say too many words. I just want to welcome you and then to also let you know that after the keynote speech and the high-level segment with the different speakers, we'll have a coffee break. We'll be able to mingle a little bit. I know some people will have to move to another event. And then after the segment with the experts, we're very happy for those who are here then to host a small reception on our behalf. So I'm going to pass the word to Eugenio, and he will take over from here. So on my behalf, thank you very much for coming. And I think most of you will see tonight at our function reception to celebrate the National Day. Those who don't have an invite, come and see me.
Thank you. Thank you, Yves. Welcome again. I'm here as a representative for Regions4, who co-organized this event together with the government of Flanders. Regions4 is a global network of subnational governments, and it wants to be the region's voice, especially in UN negotiations, European Union initiatives, and global discussions in the fields of climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable development. Besides the advocacy actions, through its programs, Regions4 promotes the capacity building and peer learning among its members to increase their ability to tackle global challenges effectively. Regions4 was established in 2002 as the network of regional governments for sustainable development, and now represents 42 governments from 21 countries in 4 continents. So as you all know, 2023 is a very important year for sustainable development, since it's a middle point between the start of Agenda 2030 and its target year of 2030. So it's a year in which the implementation of the agenda is going to be reviewed, and it's a great occasion to give a new impulse to its actions. That's why it's very important for Regions4 and for subnational governments in general to take standing during the UN High-Level Political Forum and stress once more their crucial role, not only in the implementation of the agenda, but in shaping new frameworks of action for the second half of this journey. Our event is aiming at coupling best practices at political level, as well as tangible programs that showcase action at subnational level. Today, we not only have regions from Regions4, we also have some guests. we are hosting a representative from Cordoba in Argentina, who is member of Orofogar, and also Mr. Carlos Llorens, who is Secretary General of the Orofogar Network. For a start, it's my honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Felix Dodds. Felix is Director of a Solution Center at Arizona State University, adjunct professor at University of North Carolina. He's also an international ambassador for the city of Bonn. And also, he's a very special person for Regions4 because he was one of its founders in 2002 as the Network of Regional Governments for Sustainable Development, which in 2019 became Regions4. And Flanders was one of the first members. Felix Dodds has been engaged in global negotiations on sustainable development since the London Ozone Conference in 1989, and is a world-class expert in governance and in global discussions about sustainability. Please, Felix.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here. It was an amazing conference in 2002 when the network was originally set up, and it's good to see Catalonia and the Basques here who were also co-founders. And in fact, our second conference was in San Sebastian, which then forced me to move there because the food was much better than London and the weather, to be honest. I mean, forced is maybe a bit too much, but it's a beautiful place to live, and I definitely recommend people visiting it. Now, what I want to do today is to, in a sense, give you an idea about the issues around the nexus. And I'm assuming I have to say next slide. Is that correct? Oh, it's good to see you. So we're going to cover a couple of things. And I realized this morning when I read what I was going to say that I actually was going to speak longer than I thought I was. So I will try and cut this down as we go through. We're going to look at the nexus challenges. From Bonn to the Sustainable Development Goals, the narrative that was developed during that on the issue of the nexus, the differences between the Millennium Development Goals and the Sustainable Development Goals, the 6 foundations that address nexus issues. Then I thought I'd look at what the subnational governments might consider doing between now and 2030, give you some suggestions from my side. And that's the timeline as we move forward. So next slide. So there are a number of drivers that were critical to the discussion around the nexus. Those were population growth, which we've seen continue, though we will see it peak at a certain point. We've seen the rising living standards, particularly in China and in India, but not just there, in developing countries. And we've seen rapid to be an urbanized, we are an urbanized world. We'll be an increasingly urbanized world. I think they're looking at 60% urban centers by 2050. And this has created an increased demand on water, food, and energy. To give an example of a nexus, there are more than one nexus. It's increasingly clear that we live now in this interlinked world, and so isolated solutions are not allowed now, because in fact, we need to link everything together because they have impacts all over. You know, movement on one sector can have an impact on another. We see projections for 2030 or 2040 that we may need as much as 50% extra food. We're seeing that the estimates are that we might need something like 40% extra energy, and that there'll be a shortfall of water of something like 30%. These were figures from the Stockholm Environment Institute. And of course, then in addition to that, one of the challenges is that climate change is making it even worse or even more difficult. And so we need to be able to address these in as much of a coordinated way as we can, and regional governments play a critical role at helping to address those issues at the subnational level, both in policy terms, but also in communication terms, to help the public understand the world that they're moving into early enough so that they then are supportive of the policies that need to be taken. I live in Arizona, we're getting less water. It's not an easy state to live in. So if we could move to the next slide. So just to give you a historical perspective on this, because it's important, the issue of interlinkages has been around since actually Agenda 21. In 1992, the Commission on Sustainable Development, which was set up to review government's commitments and delivery of Agenda 21, dealt with it every year, but none of us thought it was a particularly interesting set of negotiations to go to. We would go to the sector negotiations because those were where we thought the advancement needed to be. So what happened was that as we got through the financial crisis of 2008, it really highlighted the issue of energy, water, food as a interlinked agenda. And so as we were moving into 2011 and on to Rio +20, there was a meeting at the Stockholm International Water Week in July 2010, where the Germans said, what can we do to contribute to the Rio +20 process? And they had been very important in the run-up to Joburg. They did the Bonn Water Conference that basically put the sanitation target into the Millennium Development Goals. In 2005, they organized the Renewable Energy Conference, which ultimately saw the setting up of the International Renewable Energy Agency in Abu Dhabi. And so they played a critical role, the Germans, in setting agendas. And so we gave them the challenge of dealing with interlinkages, which was not an easy challenge. But the 2011 conference was the first one which really came forward with some idea about how we might do it. And so the Rio +20 conference itself said that we needed to underscore the importance of the interlinkages among key issues and challenges and the need for a systemic approach to them at all levels. So recognizing the role of governance in the context of that. The other thing, of course, that Rio +20 did was to set up the process for the Sustainable Development Goals. It said that we reaffirm to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, we need institutions at all levels that are effective, transparent, accountable, and democratic. After Rio +20, the text that was agreed on the SDGs was there would be a working group of 30 countries. Well, by the end of December 2012, Brazil were facilitating the setting up of this 30 government group. There were 70 governments that wanted those 30 seats. And so Brazil turned around and said, well, you better find a friend. And so you had some very interesting combinations for these seats. You had US, Israel, Canada. You had UK, Netherlands, Australia. You had China, Indonesia, Kazakhstan. You had Cyprus, Singapore, United Arab Emirates. You had India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. This was brilliant. The Brazilians did an amazing thing because this meant it broke down the EU. It broke down the group of 77. It created a completely different dynamics in the negotiations, which actually enabled what is a transformational agenda to come forward. In the context of that, I co-directed the second Nexus conference. This was in Chapel Hill in March 2014, and all the key negotiators came down to Chapel Hill and we talked through the issue of interlinkages. And so you'll find interlinkage targets in the food and in the water, but you won't find it in the energy because we didn't manage to persuade the energy negotiators to do that. The open working group in 2013 and 14 kind of worked to try and see what the goals would be. We know we ended up with 17. We know we ended up with 169 targets. The UK and the US tried to reduce that to 10 or 12. They didn't succeed. And in 2015, we had the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee. They never renegotiated the SDGs. They were dropped in. And what we saw was the wraparound text, which is altogether, the thing is called the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And it gives, I think, a really good narrative about how we transform in an integrated way, or forces us to think in an integrated way on how to implement these things. If we could move to the next slide. So I thought I'd go through what the differences were, because people don't necessarily realize that at the beginning, we had such a fight with the development world who wanted to continue the Millennium Development Goals and have an MDG plus versus those who wanted Sustainable Development Goals. So the MDGs just applied to developing countries. The SDGs applied to all countries. The MDGs addressed development. The SDGs addressed the 3 elements of sustainable development. The MDGs were sector focused, and the SDGs address the sectors because you have to honor the work that goes in those sectors, but also the interlinkages between them. And the MDGs address the problems while the SDGs address the symptoms and causes. And that was a crucial change. And the leadership came from developing countries. It came from Colombia, who were the lead. It came from Peru and Guatemala, who were the supportive countries at the beginning. So it was a developing country attempt to kind of get an integrated agenda. If you could move to the next slide. So one of the things that we know, having worked on the Sustainable Development Goals for the last half period up to 2030, is that they are indivisible in their nature, that we need to address all of them, that you find, if you're even dealing with kind of health, you're finding you're having to deal with water. If you're dealing with water, you're finding you have to deal with agriculture. So all of these things need to be thought of in that kind of way. The Nexus approach, I think, is really important because it really brings together the attempt to create synergies and address potential negative trade-offs. And we want to look where we can for positive trade-offs. If we do that early enough, that is possible. The longer we leave it, the more chances are that the trade-offs will in some way be negative at some point. We need to develop practical solutions and we need to share those. And that's why a network such as Regions4 SD is so important, because you're all trying to do some of these similar things, but by being a network, you can share those good practices out and that can actually amplify the implementation process. The Nexus has 3 kind of concepts of optimization, synergies, and trade-offs. But, you know, since at your level, you're dealing with water, you're dealing with soil. There was a book out last year which says we have 60 harvests left because we're destroying the topsoil. And so there's a whole lot of issues that interrelate that if we can't address them as a coherent approach, we'll see our citizens having to address things in a different way. I'm going from here because we're doing a meeting. The Romanian government's hosting a meeting, which we're helping with, to look at the issue of nitrogen waste. And that is one of the biggest, it's the biggest overshoot we have in the context of planetary boundaries. And it is now going to be one of the big issues that you deal with in the context. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone here from Netherlands. Is anyone? Well, the Netherlands has introduced a policy on halving nitrogen waste by 2030. They've not done it in the most positive way. And as they're not here, I can say that. But neither did Sri Lanka when they did it. But we need to have a transformational agenda that does that. And so those are really important. We can move to the next slide. So this is where I'm going to have to cut because I realize I'm going thing. So I'm going to give you the headlines on this. But so the 6 foundations, and most of them are what I call means of implementation. They're dealing with cross-cutting issues, the need for you to get the right people in the room from the different departments in government so that you can address that together. You all are dealing with a rural-urban nexus, the need to be able to make sure that you're supporting policies that support both the rural area and the city areas or the urban areas. Governance is a crucial issue. It's not just about the regions, it's about the local governments at that level, even the parish level that we have in the UK, that all of those levels need to be involved in the context of making sure that those policies are integrated. The next one. Again, finance. So finance is crucial. Now, the question is, how do you ensure that you get more private money coming in? So things like creating kind of investment facilities for sustainable development within the regions will be a way of making sure that you can do that. More public-private partnerships, but the the UN Economic Commission for Europe has some principles for public-private partnerships. Those are definitely worth looking at because they deal with public-private partnerships for the Sustainable Development Goals. So you need to, in any of your legal agreements to set up these things, you need to integrate the principles of sustainable development there. You need to make sure that your policy, one of the mistakes that we made for the local Agenda 21s, which some people who've been involved for longer than more recently, after the Rio conference in '92, over, I think, 10,000 local authorities around the world produced local Agenda 21s. And the problem with that was that it didn't recognize the in a sense, the ministries in local governments. And if you're going to actually involve the citizens in helping you to develop your future plans, then you need to make sure that it then goes back to the right integrated approach with the departments that you have, or the government, the committees that you have that are actually going to enact those policies. And then capacity building, helping the different levels of government, the NGOs and whatever, to be able to address those things. Next slide. So I'm coming to the end. So what I'm suggesting is that subnational governments, what could you do for 2030? Work with your local and national governments to help achieve the SDGs. There are targets for the SDGs, but they also are asking governments and local governments and regional governments to develop their own targets. It's not just the targets that were set up for the 169 targets. It's also that they've asked that the different levels of government develop their own targets that are relevant, or their own indicators that are relevant at that level. You need to integrate your biodiversity and your climate strategies and your SDG strategies together. The EU will actually be producing a nutrient strategy, which deals with the issue of nitrogen. So that integrated approach, because many of the things you want to address will be being dealt with by different departments, and it's important to improve those together. Produce subnational reviews. Some regional governments have produced those. There's no reason why it should just be governments that are producing voluntary national reviews. There's a great need for the subnational level to do it as well, and to share those experiences and even the indicator basket that they use. To utilize Regions4 for sharing good practice and hosting where you can on your website, kind of Nexus toolkits, collect where there are good practices, where all of you have done things that you think you could share will be really important. And creating a technology hub. We're having such a massive change. It's estimated that something like 70% of us will be self-employed by 2030. How are we addressing the impact of these new technologies? What can you guys do to share that and the impact it has on sustainable development? My last slide. So the last slide. So this is to give you some idea of things you might be thinking of to work around. Now, clearly, we have a ministerial meeting on the Summit of the Future. I'm not going to go into that. If you Google Summit of the Future, you may want to engage in that. It does deal with some aspects of the new technology agenda. We have the SDG Heads of State Summit. Maybe the heads of regional government should be making commitments at that as well. Maybe 3 commitments that they will do in the next 4 years, so that you get them as a leadership to challenge the governments. There'll be a Climate Ambition Summit, which the Secretary General will be hosting. And there'll be a dialogue on financing for development, looking at how can we get particularly the private sector funds into delivery. We can't do it just on overseas development. Then we have the Dubai COP, which will deal with the global stock take. And then in 24, there'll be review of the global indicators basket for the SDGs. So if regional government want to change it, they should have a look at those indicators, see if they have some suggestions on what might be put forward to change. In 24, there'll be the Summit of the Future. And in 25, there'll be the 4th UN Conference on Financing Development. Last time, there was not a seat at the table for local or regional government. So make sure this time there was a seat, because they were excluded when we had the Financing for Development Conference last. And my final comment is on 26 and 27, which is the next time we'll look at these particular issues. You should be thinking about what you want in 2030. It should be used, that conversation should be happening. You will probably not have any new goals, but you may very well be able to influence what the targets should be for the new 2030 to 2050 agenda, which is likely to be the one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felix, for flooding us with your not only knowledge, I would say understanding, which is the most important thing, and also for valuing the work of Regions4, of which you are, of course, a great testimonial, I would say, as a founder. Great. So after this, we can start with our high-level segment. We're a bit late, but should be fine. So I'm launching the video from the Minister President of Flanders, Mr. Jean Jambon, who is participating through this contribution. Audio. We are facing a small issue with the audio in the room. Okay, Mr. Jambon is going to talk about the role, the competencies of Flanders. Okay, issue is worse than we thought. Never mind. So we will launch the video afterwards. No problem. I have the pleasure to call here the stage Mr. Carles Llorens, who is the Secretary General of our partner network Orufogar, and is bringing us the message by the Vice President of Regions4 and President of Orufogar, Mr. Rachid El Abdi, from the province of Rabat Saleh Kenitra in Morocco.
Bueno, me dicen que hay traducción al español y viendo que hay muchos hispanohablantes, utilizaremos esta lengua que tiene que ser no simultáneo, sino que es consecutivo. Bueno, yo empiezo un saludo de nuestro presidente, vicepresidente de Regions4 y presidente de Orufogar, Rachid El Abdi, además de agradecer a Flandes y a Regions4 la organización de este evento, que de hecho es el primer evento regional, propiamente regional, dentro del High Level Political Forum.
From whom I represent, as well as I want to thank Flandes for organizing this Regions4 meeting, which is the first regional meeting to happen at this level.
Bueno, yo quizá lo que más útil pueda ser de lo que yo diga ahora es que les explique cómo nos presentamos a esta reunión de Naciones Unidas en el High Level Political Forum.
Perhaps I want to stress now how do we present ourselves to this UN political forum.
Nos presentamos habiendo leído el informe sobre el cumplimiento de los ODS de Naciones Unidas del 2022. Y debo decir, el report for the SDGs of 2002.
I think we need to move forward by addressing the report, the UN report, SDGs.
Bueno, es un informe, si me permite, voy a explicar cosas un poco más largas porque si no, no sé si ha sido buena idea hablar en español, pero vaya.
I'm going to try to explain things in more length. I don't know if it was a good idea to speak in Spanish to begin with.
Give me a little time. Bueno, yo les decía que nos presentamos a esta reunión habiendo leído este informe. Yo no sé si ustedes lo han leído, pero se lo recomiendo. Es un informe devastador, devastador. No son palabras mías, sino que son palabras del mismo secretario general de Naciones Unidas, Antonio Guterres. No hay ninguna cifra positiva, ninguna. Y hay algunas realmente dramáticas, como por ejemplo, y creo que ustedes interpretarán que es muy significativa, que en el año 2022 el precio de los alimentos en el mundo subió un 47%.
As I said, we came here after having read the report, for 20. I highly recommend you read this report. It was devastating. I'm not saying this, the UN Secretary General himself agrees with this. There was no positive sign for see. There were very dramatic findings. For example, in 2022, food prices worldwide climbed staggering 47%. PNR.
Las cifras son desastrosas en muchos sentidos, entre ellos el agravamiento de las situaciones de pobreza extrema. Bueno, este informe hace pensar mucho y lo que nosotros como regionalistas decimos frente a esta situación y lo que venimos a explicar aquí es nuestro compromiso, el compromiso que pide en el mismo prólogo del informe el secretario de Naciones Unidas, un compromiso renovado, pues las regiones venimos a expresar este compromiso renovado. Y venimos a explicar también que podemos hacer mucho más y que hay sectores en esta crisis que el informe señala que tiene el cambio climático como agravador del resto de las crisis. Nosotros podemos hacer mucho más en temas clave, como por ejemplo, se ha citado aquí en la última imagen, gestión de basuras, temas muy prácticos, gestión de aguas, transición energética. Los gobiernos regionales en estos tres temas que se citaban en la última parte podemos hacer mucho. De la misma forma que podemos hacer mucho tratando y trabajando con las poblaciones más desfavorecidas porque nosotros estamos ahí. Esto es lo principal que debemos decir a Naciones Unidas.
We have to think about this report as a renewed commitment that we all need to make. We, as regionalists, need to renew this commitment. We can do more in this crisis, which is aggravated by the climate crisis, which is acting as a worsening catalyst. We have, last slide, we showed trash components, water, energy transition, unfavorable populations, the most extreme poverty.
Bueno, este informe señala que las causas de estas malas cifras tienen que ver con la pandemia y con la guerra. Pero nosotros debemos decir algo más. Nosotros participamos en octubre del 2019 en el Comité Mundial de Seguridad Alimentaria de la FAO, octubre del 2019, es decir, no sabíamos que era la COVID-19. Bueno, y en aquel momento el informe que se presentó en Naciones Unidas, en la FAO en Roma, se decía que el último año se había agravado la situación de hambre en 50 millones de personas. Por tanto, la crisis no tiene solo que ver con la COVID y con la guerra, tiene que ver con más cosas. Y nosotros apuntamos una: la mala gobernanza. La mala gobernanza.
This report points to the main causes for the bad numbers. However, in the Global Committee Conference held in we discovered that it was much more than COVID, because there had been 50 million people globally. So we realized quickly that the crisis was not caused only by COVID or the war. The main factor was a very poor governance.
¿Qué queremos decir con una mala gobernanza? Pues miren, les hablaré, para no opinar, les hablaré de otro informe. se acaba de hacer público el informe de competitividad de de las regiones de la Unión Europea, un informe oficial de la Unión Europea. Se acaba de hacer público. Yo no entiendo por qué no nos hemos fijado más en este informe. Es otro informe muy impactante. Es decir, tanto Naciones Unidas como la Unión Europea nos hacen unos informes muy impactantes que a veces parece que no lee nadie, ¿no? Pero resulta que este informe sobre la competitividad de las regiones europeas muestra que un año más, pero agravado, las regiones capitales superan en muchísimo su nivel de competitividad que el resto de las regiones. En Europa hay solo 3 países equilibrados y tengo que felicitarles porque uno de ellos es Bélgica y Flandes dentro de Bélgica, ¿no? El otro es Holanda y el otro es Dinamarca. El resto, las regiones capitales, tienen un nivel de competitividad de muchísimos puntos respecto al resto. Hay un país que es muy chocante, ¿no? Resulta que Île-de-France, la región de París, en este índice de competitividad está en el 149. Bueno, está 50 puntos por encima de todo el resto de las regiones de Francia. Pero esto pasa en Francia, pero pasa también en Rumanía y en Suecia y en Finlandia y en todas partes excepto los 3 países que les he dicho. Y pasa también en España, porque en España, bueno, las regiones ricas y competitivas eran Cataluña y el País Vasco, pero ahora la región más competitividad, con más de 20 puntos respecto a Cataluña y el País Vasco, es la Comunidad Autónoma de Madrid. No nos extraña que haya un fenómeno de España vacía, cuando todo se centraliza en las regiones capitales o en las capitales, porque tampoco en las regiones, porque si las regiones son muy... No, en las capitales. Bueno, este es...
Why do we have this poor governance I was referring to? I want to cite another report that and why haven't we looked at this report? Both the UN and the EU provide us with these incredibly insightful reports that we all need to look at. For example, the main region over the rest of the regions, there are only 3 balanced nations in the European continent. This would be Belgium, which encompasses Flanders, the Netherlands, and Denmark. Then we have this Île-de-France, which ranks at 149th, and it's 50 points over. This is in France, but it's happening as well in Romania, Sweden, Finland, and even in Spain. In Spain, the most prosperous regions were the Catalonia region, as well as the Basque country. But there was also the autonomous region of
Madrid,
which was 20 plus points above the others. So this was not only happening in the capital, at the capital level, or the capital regions.
Claro, la región de Madrid respecto a Extremadura son 50 puntos también, ¿no? Pero bueno, yo lo que quería decirles es que nosotros vamos, este fenómeno pasa en todo el mundo, no solo en Europa, evidentemente, pasa en todo el mundo, y nosotros queremos hablar de estos temas. Queremos hablar de estos temas porque entendemos que traban la implementación de los ODS, traban los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible, clarísimamente. Y bueno, no solo se trata de países vacíos y de Españas vacías, se trata de otro problema que va muy ligado a este y que nosotros hemos insistido y vamos a volver a insistir, que es el éxodo rural. Tampoco entendemos cómo nadie, excepto los regionalistas, hablan del éxodo rural. Es uno de los problemas más graves que tenemos y que agrava todas las crisis acumuladas. Por tanto, el mensaje que yo quería llevarles de parte de nuestro presidente y de parte de nuestra organización es que nosotros vamos a este High Level Political Forum con unos mensajes que creemos que son muy claros y que incluso son mensajes combativos en este debate. No venimos a Nueva York a contemporizar, venimos a plantear unas situaciones que nos parecen que, junto a la guerra, evidentemente, y la COVID y todo eso, pues está trabando salir de la pobreza, conseguir el hambre cero y todos los objetivos de la Agenda 2030.
I was referring to Madrid and the Extremadura region, which is 50 points. But this is happening not only in Europe, this is happening all over the world. So we want to address why these issues are blocking the sustainable development goals that we all want to achieve. And I must also speak about the rural exodus, which is very serious as this aggravates all of the built-up crises that have been happening all over the world. So we come here with very specific, clear messages. We come here to raise awareness about all these issues and the hunger that's happening, addressing the poverty that's happening everywhere, so we can come up with solutions.
Gracias.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Carlos. I think you already identified some very crucial themes that have to be addressed during this occasion, this HLPF. We are now able to launch the video by Mr. Jean Jambon. So I leave the word to the Minister President of Flanders.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, colleagues. First of all, I would like to welcome you to our beautiful Flanders House, where we have gathered today to participate in a side event organized jointly by Flanders and Regions 4. Our primary objective is to showcase a selection of innovative best practices that can effectively address the current and future challenges we face. I'm thrilled at the opportunity to share these approaches and for you to engage in undoubtedly enriching discussions. Unfortunately, circumstances prevent me from being physically present. For today is the national holiday of Flanders, for which I have domestic duties to fulfill. On this special occasion, we commemorate the enduring struggle of my people for increased political representation and reflect upon our journey towards democracy. However, I'm pleased to inform you my absence is not the end of the road. Flanders representatives have graciously taken the time during their holiday to attend this event. Their presence here demonstrates our unwavering commitment to fostering collaboration and sharing knowledge for the betterment of all. It is important to note that Flanders has been at the forefront of translating the Global 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development into a set of region-specific goals through our initiative called Focus 2030. This comprehensive framework commits the Flemish government to the realization of 53 goals measured by 111 indicators. We have since evaluated our progress in a voluntary report as part of Belgium's VNR. You can always find the publication in print and online. It will also be sent to you by email shortly after this event. Focus 2030 alone couldn't still Flemish hunger for innovation. Therefore, we have created Vision 2050, a blueprint for the society of tomorrow. Vision 2050 aims to accelerate some of the essential societal, technological, environmental, institutional, and economic transformations. 7 transition processes were chosen as primary focus to radically overhaul how we live, work, and experience life itself. collaboration, and engagement are key. We actively want to involve citizens, businesses, and civil society organizations in the decision-making process. Together, we aim to co-create solutions, share knowledge, and foster innovation that each can be upscaled and replicated in the near future. We also recognize a vision for incremental improvements alone will not be sufficient to achieve sustainability goals. Instead, we must embrace transformative actions that redefine our mindset, operations, and interactions with our environment. This includes reimagining our economic models, re-evaluating our consumption patterns, and rethinking our social structures. By nurturing a culture of innovation, we can drive the development and adoption of sustainable technologies, practices, and business models, thereby accelerating our transition towards a more sustainable society. In 2024, during Flanders' co-chairmanship of the European Union, we will launch Flanders Technology and Innovation, an initiative that presents a unique opportunity for Europe and the world to witness Flanders' pioneering role in the fifth industrial revolution with a focus on data technology and artificial intelligence. We firmly believe Flemish expertise can contribute to transforming societies and advancing sustainable development goals on a global scale. In the upcoming session, some of the Flemish best practices will be presented to you. Our experts will introduce you to water and energy innovations, sustainability in the port of Antwerp and Bruges, and our Blue Deal. Furthermore, the Association of Flemish Cities and Municipalities will introduce their use of data for benchmarking the SDGs at the local level. After the insightful remarks, political segments, and expert focuses, I encourage you to seize the opportunity to engage with our representatives should you have any further questions, seek knowledge exchange, or explore potential avenues for cooperation. I wish you an interesting session and a lot of follow-up during our networking lunch. Enjoy.
Thank you. I now give the word to Ms. Meritxell Serret. She is the Minister of Foreign Affairs and European Union of Catalonia in Spain. She has been Minister of Agriculture, Livestock, Fisheries and Food before she had to leave Catalonia to live in exile for a couple of years, in which she worked as a delegate of the government of Catalonia to the European Union in Belgium. She was then the first minister to be reinstated by the Catalan government. And as a member of parliament of Catalonia, she has been also president of the Commission for Inquiry for Spying on Political Representatives, Activists, Journalists, and their families by the Kingdom of Spain using Pegasus and Candiru software. And she was spokesperson for the Commission for Foreign Action, Transparency, and Cooperation. Ms. Serret, word is yours. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm very glad to be here as representative of the Catalan government. And thanks Region4 and of course Flanders government to organize this event. The commitment of Catalonia with not only the SDGs but with the multilateralism, it's long lasting. And today here we want also to strengthen this commitment because it supposes also a commitment against inequalities, a commitment for the culture of peace, and a commitment also with the United Nations systems, which in our perspective today is more necessary than ever regarding all the main challenges, not only the SDGs and the climate change, but also war and the rising of populisms. So we need to reinforce this commitment, and so Catalonia will also work to strengthen the alliance with the declaration and implementation of the 2030 agenda. And mainly because not only we want to fulfill all the compromises regarding human rights, but also, as I said before, the climate change crisis, which in our situation has a great impact, mainly because we live in a Mediterranean area. And the Mediterranean basin has already been recognized as one of the parts of the world which will have a major impact of climate change and the warming effect. And it will have an impact on the availability of water, but also then on all the aquatic ecosystems and of course all the socioeconomic activities, and so the way of life of most population in the Mediterranean basin. In Catalonia, we are living nowadays, since 2021, one of the major droughts in our history, and not only has decreased the flow of the rivers, the level of the aquifers and the different reservoirs we have, but it has had then also the impacts in all the aquatic ecosystems, but mainly in agriculture, so our capacity to produce food, but also in forests, so all the ecosystems, wild ecosystems, and our biodiversity. And what is worse, we are aware that is something structural. That is something that will have a long lasting in the next year. So we need also a structural, consistent, comprehensive response and answers to this major threat. And that is why we have also began with this idea to build this nexus between water management, but also energy, renewable energy producing, because in our sense, in our situation, it is necessary. We have been for the last year reinforcing all our capacity to generate water with the desalinization, for example, or regeneration. So we need a major a much more produced supply of energy, and so reinforce then also our energy transition, and that's links then with all the different decisions that the government and initiatives that the government has been pushing in the last years, not only the climate change law approved in 2017, but also a national energy pact and the energy perspective of Catalonia in the year 2050. Because as I said before, in the Mediterranean, we have opportunities with the photovoltaic and aeolic resources to generate green energy, but we need to stress all this deployment, all this capacity to generate energies, and we need to do it really fast regarding all our threats. And here is also an initiative, the initiative to create a public energy company that later my colleague from the Energetica, which is the name of this public company, created recently, will explain and will give you more details about the good job we're beginning to do, and challenging also job we are beginning to do. So new water resources, but we, as I said before, we need this comprehensive approach, and that is why in 2021 the government, we began with this challenge of governance. So in the same government, we created in one ministry, we tried to put together these main competences and areas: water, energy, agriculture and food, and all forestry and fisheries, and all the biodiversity and ecosystems and environmental management. So to have this, as I said, comprehensive and ecosystemic vision, and also this these governments to stress the coordination between not only the government, but also with the different stakeholders from our society, the private and companies, but also academic and research. And because it's evident that we need to be aware of what was said before, the interlink, but also the interdependence of these different areas, and mainly in our country regarding this territorial and the diversity of our territory and ecosystems. We need to work together, share visions, join different actions, because every country is different, but Catalonia, and it's one of the evolutions also that the keynote speaker told us, we have a duality in our country between the rural and urban areas. We live in a country where 90% of our territory is rural, but there is only 10% of population living in these rural areas, while 90% of population is living in more or less 10% of territory, mainly in the coastal areas. So this is also a major challenge on how we try to build a global vision linking these dependencies between managing the management of the different ecosystems and the capacity to manage well the water reservoirs and rivers and all the water ecosystem, regarding also the impact in our forest. 60% of our territories is occupied by forests. So it is a major challenge. And in this, trying to build this good dialogue between and this interdependence between rural and urban, we have been building different strategies that, as I said before, we are trying to put in common: the food strategy of Catalonia, the rural agenda of Catalonia, which is pioneering at the European level together with the French one, an intersectoral conservation plan for wild pollinators, the national water table, as I said before, the perspective of energy to 2050, but also the climate change adaptation strategy for Horizon 2030, and so on. And as I said before, we need to stress this symbiosis between these two big realities, and the on the evolution of the rural areas. And we need also, when deploying all the energy transition, to ensure that the economical model of this energy transition reinforces the local economies in rural areas also. So we need in this governance, this governance that try to reinforce this nexus between the different issues and competences. We need to stress the governance that we were talking before, with this multi-level approach, taking into account local actors, more participation from the different stakeholders, and this intersectoral and transversal vision and management. And that is what we have concreted also in what I will try to explain very fast, the Catalonia 2030 Alliance, and also the different system of clusters that historically our economy has been creating, and that they are a motor for the innovation and socioeconomic development in different territories of Catalonia. But also I would like to stress another initiative that we have been working the last years, and nowadays we are stressing regarding also the Spanish presidency of the Council of the European Union, which is the Mediterranean macro region. An initiative that we are pushing or trying to lobby with other regions from the Mediterranean basin, mainly with Regions4 PACA in France, but who has already the support of most of Mediterranean regions of Spain, France, some of Italy, the majors from Italy, and also from Greece and also Tetuan from Morocco. And we are trying to gain supports. And what this macro region, Mediterranean macro region, the main aim is how we face climate change impact, mainly regarding water and energy, or for example, waste management, but focusing on regional and local cooperation projects to ensure real impact, but to reinforce mainly this cooperation in all the basin, the three coasts of the Mediterranean basin, the north of Africa, but also the east coast and the European coast, because the future of Mediterranean is clue from our perspective, and it involves all the actors in all the basin. And for the future of Europe is determinant that we are able to address the impact of climate change in Mediterranean areas and countries. So this is a major initiative we are pushing also regarding the SDGs. And just in brief, I will explain very briefly what is Catalonia 2030 Alliance. As I said before, is the expression of the commitment of the different, not only government, but also different stakeholders with 80 members from organizations of education and research, business and trade, also NGOs from environmental or third sector. And this is in a space for innovation to stress and to promote intersectoral alliances, the dialogue and this mutual recognition and exchange of views regarding SDGs between the different stakeholders, and mainly to learn one from each other's, exchange best practices, and also it is in a space of influence, not only at regional or local level, but if necessary, to address to other levels of governance. And the main challenge that we have is, of course, the credibility. And we need to keep the cohesion of this group, but it goes together with concrete actions and being able to achieve impacts and good results. And that is what we will try to show, the good results in the monitoring report of the implementation of the 2030 agenda that we will present here in New York in the SDG Summit in September 2023. And of course, we will try to transmit and summarize the state of each SDG, but also the pending challenges and how we are planning to achieve them. And to end up, just to let you know, some of the main clusters that are helping also in Catalonia to achieve, to make to be able to give answer to the 2030 agenda. We have a policy of clusters that began 30 years ago, so it's a long-lasting governance that is well rooted in not only in from the perspective of the government, but also in the culture of our private actors. There are 27 Catalan clusters in different competences, and the Catalan cluster for bioenergy, for energy efficiency, automotive, logistic of international mobility, lightweight mobility, packaging, meat and alternative protein clusters, advanced materials clusters, photonics. So these are initiatives like the Catalan Water also partnership that brings us multi-level projects, innovative solutions, and mainly the capacity to join efforts. That means investments. And they are able to mobilize 2,700 companies, 70,000 millions of euros, and they represent and engage 68% of SMEs, 10% large companies, and also research centers, universities, startups, environmental actors. So they are a really good tool to make possible a real impact in the different strategies to achieve the SDGs. And finally, I end yet my conclusion, my intervention, just giving you the thanks for having this opportunity, but also we will always be at your disposal to share initiatives, not the ones we have said only, but also the initiatives to link urban agenda and rural agenda that we are stressing, and to connect them also with the local governments in these multi-level and transversal strategies. So thank you very much. And again, thank you for your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Serrat. So I would give a priority to in-person speakers since we are running a bit late, and then maybe we'll watch the videos later while we drink coffee. I will call Ms. Silvina Rivero, the Minister of Coordination of the province of Córdoba in Argentina. Please.
Bueno, buenos días, voy a hablar en español. Muchísimas gracias. ¿Cómo estás, Metzel?
Good morning, I'm going to speak in Spanish. Thank you very much.
Trataré de ser breve. En primer lugar, agradecer, por supuesto, a Regions4, al gobierno de Flandes, a la gente, a los representantes de Orufogar por la invitación, y aprovechar este breve espacio para compartir con ustedes cómo desde el gobierno de la provincia de Córdoba en Argentina trabajamos en el marco de lo que es la agenda y contemplamos ese marco a la hora de definir nuestras políticas públicas. ¿Cuáles son nuestros ejes?
I first of all want to thank Regions4 and the Flanders government for hosting this meeting. I want to share with you what the Córdoba government is doing. We're working on the agenda framework.
Bien, primero resaltar la importancia que tenemos los gobiernos provinciales o subnacionales en lo que es este desarrollo que pretendemos, este desarrollo sostenible. ¿Por qué los gobiernos provinciales? Por un lado tenemos esa cercanía territorial que no tiene un gobierno nacional, y tenemos capacidades de inversión, de definición de políticas, de generación de marcos normativos que no tienen los gobiernos locales. Tenemos esa mirada más integral y sobre todo tenemos la responsabilidad sobre ese territorio.
I want to highlight.
Adelante.
I want to highlight what we, as the subnational or provincial governments, are doing in these the goals of sustainable development. We can do things at our level that larger governments cannot do.
Bien, en Córdoba tenemos una realidad similar a la que comentaba Meritze en Cataluña, 427 gobiernos locales con mucha diversidad cultural, económica, productiva, y nuestro foco como gobierno provincial es lograr ese desarrollo equitativo a lo largo del territorio y afianzar el arraigo de cada habitante en su propia comunidad.
I want to cite the Catalunya that was mentioned before, example of 47 local organizations working to have an equitable development and how to achieve these common goals that we have.
Nuestro foco está puesto en la generación del empleo. Entendemos que el empleo es el gran traccionador de la movilidad social. Y en ese marco trabajamos para generar fuentes de empleo con una principal mirada en lo que son las alianzas, tanto la gobernanza multinivel como la gobernanza multiactoral con el sector productivo, con el sector académico, con la sociedad civil, es decir, con los distintos actores.
We focus on the generation of employment, jobs, and we have the social movement in order to create jobs. And for this, we believe in creating alliances at productivity, region, academic level.
Bien. Entendemos que el construir políticas en alianza, implementarlas, garantizan también la sostenibilidad porque van mucho más allá de lo que es un gobierno de turno. Los gobiernos hoy podemos estar, mañana no, pero poder incorporar a los sectores productivos, a los sectores académicos, en la definición de políticas, en la implementación de esas políticas, también traen, por un lado, el conocimiento de la realidad que tiene el propio sector y, por otro lado, una garantía de sostenibilidad en el tiempo más allá del gobierno de turno.
We recognize alliances as being much better than governments. Governments come and go, but alliances can achieve or attempt to achieve more sustainable development goals. So again, by forming alliances with the production and the academic organizations, we can come up with policies that we are more able to sustain on the long term.
Bien, nosotros hemos formalizado esas alianzas dentro de la estructura de gobierno, creando sociedades de economía mixta que le llamamos agencia, en donde junto al sector productivo y junto al sector académico, no solo compartimos el capital accionario y los órganos de decisión, me refiero a los directorios, sino que también cofinanciamos con cada uno de estos sectores los distintos programas y acciones que llevamos adelante.
So we have formalized some of these alliances within our own governments. So we call these mixed government alliances, where we share what we want to achieve, and we also co-finance these initiatives.
Puedo mencionar 4 estructuras vinculadas a temas estratégicos para la provincia de Córdoba que funcionan de esta manera como sociedades de economía mixta en temas, insisto, prioritarios para nuestro desarrollo. Uno es la Agencia Pro Córdoba, con más de 20 años de existencia, en donde se trabaja en todo lo que es comercio exterior e internacionalización de nuestras empresas. La otra es la Agencia Innovar y Emprender, que busca promover la creación de empresas de bases tecnológicas. La Agencia Conectividad Córdoba, que trabaja con una fibra, digamos, en todo lo que es la conectividad en los 427 municipios, llevando un tendido de red de fibra de más de 5.700 kilómetros, con el cual llegamos con internet accesible y de calidad en todo el territorio. Y por último, la Agencia Competitividad, que es la más nueva, que trabaja en esto, en la competitividad del sector productivo y en la clusterización, y más allá de lo que den hoy los indicadores de competitividad, como comentaba Charles en su presentación, la realidad que está dándose en España, nosotros hemos basado esa agencia en la experiencia tanto del gobierno de Cataluña como de País Vasco, en su experiencia en materia de desarrollo de organismos de competitividad, y un poco esta agencia ha sido producto de analizar esos 2 casos y bueno, y en ese sentido poner en valor por ahí estos espacios de compartir buenas prácticas y distintos programas que se llevan adelante a nivel internacional.
¿No tienes tu escrito?
Sí.
Gracias. So we are working within 4 structures within this mixed economy model. We have the Agencia Pro Córdoba, which has been working for 20+ years. It's dedicated to international trade and the internationalization of the Cordoba businesses. We have a second agency, which is called Innovation and Entrepreneurship, dedicated to promote the development of entrepreneurships on a technological level. Then we have the Cordoba Connectivity, focused in making sure an infrastructure of an efficient connectivity in all the municipalities and the common areas of the territory and the province, promoting the inclusion of digital means and the possibilities of social economic development. Lastly, we have the competitivity organism recently created seeking to widen competition and the clusterization of our businesses. And it's inspired in the policies and experiences of the Basque Country and Catalonia.
Bueno, decía, un tema fundamental es la constitución de alianzas y la formalización para poder, digamos, darle sustentabilidad a esas políticas. La otra cuestión clave, creo, en el rol que tenemos los gobiernos regionales, es en aportar la infraestructura necesaria para el desarrollo. Los gobiernos locales probablemente no tengan ni la mirada estratégica, digo, territorialmente, ni la capacidad financiera de afrontar las grandes obras de infraestructura necesarias para ese desarrollo regional al que apuntamos.
We have the sustainability goal. However, at a regional level, governments tend to make mistakes. We don't have the vision to know about the financial challenges ahead of us, so which is obviously very, very important to achieve any of these goals.
Voy a resumir, pero simplemente mencionar que desde el gobierno hemos impulsado grandes obras como gasoductos troncales, más de 3.000 kilómetros, o como los acueductos troncales u obras de infraestructura vial muy importantes que miran ese desarrollo productivo de todo el territorio provincial.
We have
Just to summarize, I wanted to say our government has promoted the building of several public works such as gas pipelines and sanitation pipelines, and has already built many kilometers of roadways.
Y por último, en esto de buscar generar condiciones para el desarrollo local, poner en valor la responsabilidad que tenemos los gobiernos provinciales de generar marcos normativos que den garantías, que atraigan inversiones y que permitan ese desarrollo.
And following our focus to have local development, it is the responsibility of us, the local government, to generate a normative framework so that it can attract investment and participation in investments to develop locally.
En el caso de la provincia de Córdoba, hemos sancionado nuevas leyes de promoción industrial, de clusterización, de economía del conocimiento, que buscan a través de los incentivos fiscales o de subsidios a la generación de nuevos puestos de trabajo con mayor beneficio si se radican en los parques industriales que desarrollamos en el territorio o con una gran mirada en lo que es toda la parte de brecha de géneros, buscamos a través de estos marcos generar esos incentivos a las inversiones regionales que permitan este crecimiento equitativo y parejo al que hacía mención al comienzo.
As the local government, we're also concentrating on creating a local framework in order to promote knowledge economy, declusterization. We've provided fiscal incentives and created the right conditions so that we can generate jobs in our province with a gender perspective in order to promote growth.
Bueno, no tenemos más tiempo, simplemente volver a insistir la responsabilidad y el rol que debemos jugar los gobiernos provinciales a la hora de afrontar los desafíos que la agenda nos demanda. Muchísimas gracias.
We don't have much time left, but I just want to reemphasize the role that local governments and provincial governments must play in this responsibility for the development and to meet their objectives.
Bueno, muy bien.
Thank you a lot, Mr. Rivero. So now I would like to call here on the stage Mr. Jonan Fernandez, Secretary General of the Social Transition and Agenda 2030. No, sorry. He's having a video. No, I would like to call in person Mr. Leonardo Orlando, Prefecto de la Provincia de Manabí, from Ecuador, who is a member of Regions4 through the network Congo-P.
Con el cronómetro. Muy buenos días con todas y con todos. Muchas gracias al gobierno de Flandes, de Bélgica, a Regions4, a Orfugar y a todos. Gracias por este importante foro. Y quiero aprovechar este espacio en virtud de quienes me han antecedido en la palabra, abordaron varios temas relacionados a mi exposición.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks to the government and the Belgian governments for creating this important forum. I want to begin by saying that some of the previous speakers have already addressed many of the points I'm going to speak about.
Lo que permitió que como provincia de Manabí, una de las 24 provincias que constituyen gobiernos intermedios en mi país, Ecuador, fue justamente la presentación del informe local voluntario 2022 de la Agenda Global de los 17 Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, Agenda Global 2030, gracias también al apoyo del Congo-P, organismo que agrupa a todas las prefecturas del Ecuador, CGLU, y también contamos con el acompañamiento del PNUD, el Programa de Naciones Unidas para el Desarrollo.
We in the Manatee province are one of 4 of intern governments in Ecuador, and we based our scope of work in the 2022 Global Agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals we all share. We also work with ECOGOPE and CNU, as well as within the framework of the UN Goals for Sustainable Development.
Y voy a referirme a lo dicho por Carles de Orfugar y la ministra de la provincia de Córdoba, que son muy importantes. El rol de la descentralización y una mayor autonomía económica, administrativa, fiscal de los gobiernos intermedios y su rol articulador con los gobiernos locales para el cumplimiento de la Agenda 2030.
I want to highlight the important role that we all play. And as previous speakers mentioned, it's very important to have a decentralization and more autonomy on all these initiatives that we local governments can have in the financing and development and other areas in order to achieve the 2030 agenda.
Los gobiernos provinciales, las gobernaciones regionales o de departamentos, somos gobiernos de cercanía y que sin tener las competencias propias de las ciudades, incidimos en el ámbito rural y en el ámbito urbano territorial.
We as provincial governments or departments, despite not having the resources that city governments have, we do play an important role at the rural and territorial levels.
Y en ese sentido, en virtud de la intervención territorial, sobre todo en zonas rurales, en comunidades muy dispersas, tenemos una gran responsabilidad sobre todo el cumplimiento de los objetivos y quisiera referirme a unos pocos. El objetivo 1, superar la pobreza en todas sus formas. El objetivo 2, erradicar el hambre y poder permitir el acceso a los alimentos a toda la población. Y el objetivo 10, la reducción de las desigualdades sociales y territoriales.
We have to intervene at the territorial intervention that we had at the spread out communities in the country. We have many goals. Amongst them, the most important ones are eradicating poverty, hunger, access to food by all people, and alleviating the inequalities that exist at the social and territorial levels.
En ese sentido, hemos medido el cumplimiento de los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible en los 22 cantones que conforman mi provincia y tenemos 56 parroquias rurales. En resumen, hemos territorializado la agenda de los ODS en nuestra provincia y queremos que esto sirva, y de hecho está sirviendo, como un ejemplo para todas las demás provincias del Ecuador.
We have the Sustainable Development Goals, and we have 22 areas in our country, as well as 56 rural parishes working with us. And we have the ODS in our province, and we want all these initiatives to serve as an example for all Ecuadorian organizations.
Para trabajar, para mejorar la calidad de vida y tener mayor justicia social de las personas pobres, debemos de saber dónde están y cómo viven esas personas pobres y cuáles son sus oportunidades para superar la pobreza a través de la creación de igualdad de oportunidades en el ámbito normativo, pero sobre todo en el ámbito de su inclusión en programas, planes y proyectos específicos.
We seek to improve the life quality of the population and to have social justice for the poor. But first, we need to know where they are, how they live, so we can create equal opportunities, not only within the framework of regulations.
Recordemos las palabras de José Mujica, expresidente de Uruguay, quien decía: si en el mundo hay pobreza, nadie está rico. Esta es una llamada a la acción. Debemos unirnos todos los niveles de gobierno a nivel de un país, todos los países del mundo y también todos los sectores, la cooperación internacional, la academia, la sociedad civil, para implementar la Agenda 2030 y trabajar hacia un futuro sostenible de prosperidad, de mayor igualdad, de mayor cohesión social, donde efectivamente nadie se quede atrás.
Let's remember the words of José Mujica, Uruguayan president. Where there is poverty in the world, no one can be rich. So we all need to unite at every level, not only locally, but countries have to unite. The academy sector has to unite. Civil society has to unite. So we can all push forward to achieve the objectives of the 2030 agenda, so that we turn into reality what we say, no one is left behind.
Como provincia, hemos avanzado en el camino hacia el desarrollo sostenible, la equidad territorial y una mayor justicia social. Pero todavía queda mucho trabajo por hacer.
As a province, we have advanced in different areas, social justice, poverty, and others. But as a society, there's a lot of work still to be done.
Es por eso que hoy desde Manabí, Ecuador, extendemos un llamado fraterno a toda la cooperación internacional, de manera especial a los países desarrollados, para canalizar recursos, conocimientos, innovación, tecnología y capital humano comprometido con el objetivo general de la Agenda Global 2030. No dejar a nadie atrás y hacer de esta agenda una agenda verdaderamente incluyente en lo territorial y en lo social.
So from Malawi, Ecuador, we call on the international community to have a broader cooperation, and particularly the developed nations, so we can join forces, the human capital, technology, so we all have an inclusive agenda going forward. No one is left behind, and we all can achieve the objectives of our 2030 agenda.
La sostenibilidad y el desarrollo incluyente y solidario no solo es una opción, es una necesidad imperativa que debe implicar un mandato ético y moral de conciencia de los gobernantes y líderes de todo el mundo.
Sustainability and inclusive development has to be foremost in the minds of all governments and the entire world.
Es un camino que debemos recorrer juntos, con determinación, con pasión, con amor, con solidaridad y mucho coraje, para garantizar un futuro próspero, sostenible y resiliente para las generaciones futuras. Juntos podemos y debemos lograrlo. Muchas gracias.
It's a road we must travel together to, which will take determination, love, lots of courage. This way we can guarantee that we achieve this for future generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leonardo. Thanks a lot also to Mr. Marabotto, our interpreter. So now, I will launch the remaining videos, which are by Mr. Jonan Fernandez, Secretary General of Social Transition and Agenda 2030 in the Basque Country. It will be followed by the video by, the first is Ms. Saida Melina Rodriguez Gomez, Secretary General for Sustainable Development of the state of Yucatan, Mexico. Then Mr. Jonan Fernandez, and last, Mr. Benoit Charette, Minister of the Environment, Fight Against Climate Change and Wildlife and Parks of Quebec in Canada. To guarantee your survival, I will allow the audience to have some snacks while watch the videos. Just please don't be too loud so we can also hear what our interpreters. Thank you.
Gracias a Regions4 y al gobierno de Flanders en Bélgica por invitarme. Yucatán es un estado que se caracteriza por su riqueza natural y cultural, los que nos confiere una responsabilidad para protegerla y asegurar su permanencia para las presentes y futuras generaciones. En el gobierno del estado y bajo la visión de nuestro gobernador, el licenciado Mauricio Vila Dosal, nuestro objetivo ha sido la de fomentar la protección al medio ambiente de una manera integral y multidisciplinaria. área en el gobierno del Estado con facultades y atribuciones relacionadas a promover asuntos energéticos. Esta es la Subsecretaría de Energía, perteneciente a la Secretaría de Fomento Económico y Trabajo, desde donde en coordinación con las demás secretarías del Estado hemos asumido compromisos y retos tales como la Estrategia Energética de Yucatán, el Net Zero Building y el Consejo de Energía de Yucatán. Asimismo, el día de hoy tenemos ya en operación 2 parques fotovoltaicos y 3 eólicos que en conjunto suman 300 megawatts de capacidad instalada y 50 ciudades sostenibles, el ODS 11. Trabajamos con el Ayuntamiento de Mérida, nuestra ciudad capital, en el Plan Integral de Mejora de Movilidad de Mérida, PIMS, y su zona metropolitana. A la fecha se han implementado el Plan de Infraestructura de Ciclovías con 71 kilómetros nuevos de ciclovías en la ciudad de Mérida, que en total conectan 130 kilómetros de ciclovía en la capital del estado. También les cuento del nuevo medio de transporte eléctrico, el YETRAM. Esta es la nueva ruta del sistema de transporte metropolitano Vaivén, que será nuestra cero residuos. Una estrategia que busca el aprovechamiento máximo de los residuos a través del fomento de una cultura ambiental, equipamiento e infraestructura innovadora. La acción más importante y trascendente de esta estrategia es el Sistema Metropolitano para el Manejo de Residuos, con el que se atiende el problema de residuos sólidos que contempla la clausura de tiraderos al aire libre, el establecimiento de estaciones de transferencia, el fomento del acopio diferenciado y el equipamiento para mejorar la recolección de los residuos, pasando de a la planta de pellets de combustible de residuos, que próximamente estará ya en construcción en el estado. Nos colocamos a la vanguardia en México y Latinoamérica en la economía circular. Se cerrarán rellenos sanitarios y se crearán más de 120 empleos verdes en la operación de esta planta y aumentará el 50% las exportaciones vía marítima desde el Puerto de Progreso a partir de la unión de voluntades entre sociedad, empresas y gobiernos. Así convertimos a los residuos en un valor para todos. Si bien hemos avanzado, sabemos que todavía queda mucho por hacer. Ya que la única forma de lograr un cambio profundo y permanente es trabajando unidos. Estamos orgullosos de la colaboración institucional que hemos logrado, los 3 niveles de gobierno, la iniciativa privada, organismos internacionales, la academia, la sociedad civil y las comunidades en la construcción de un Yucatán y un mundo mejor para todas y todos. Muchas gracias.
de este evento y la invitación a participar en el mismo. Saludo también al ministro presidente de Flandes, Jan Jambon, y al resto de personas participantes en este panel que es a la vez tan local y tan internacional. Es un honor y un privilegio formar parte de esta mesa de reflexión. El Gobierno vasco comparte una visión crítica sobre el grado del cumplimiento de los ODS en el mundo. Lo hemos dicho en más ocasiones, expresamos una doble preocupación. La Agenda 2030 está, por un lado, aquejada de un déficit de compromiso práctico y, por otro, de un superávit de abstracción. Por eso, promovemos un modelo de localización y gobernanza basado en un principio, una metodología, 5 infraestructuras y una propuesta dirigida a la sociedad. Las desgrano paso a paso. En primer lugar, un principio de proactividad. El compromiso con la Agenda 2030 es más que adhesión y alineamiento formal de los programas propios con los ODS. Es una interpelación sobre el max de la Agenda 2030. ¿En qué cambian nuestras políticas públicas? En eso reside su capacidad transformadora. Este principio responde a la ambición de la década de la acción. En segundo lugar, la metodología de lo concreto. Los ODS necesitan más concreción y menos abstracción. Pasar de las palabras a los hechos. Plasmación en proyectos tangibles que nos acerquen a su cumplimiento. O dicho de otra manera, impulsar palancas realmente innovadoras. El Gobierno vasco ha apostado en concreto por un esquema de 7 compromisos tractores y 7 proyectos emblemáticos. Se necesita también un sistema de infraestructuras básicas que nos comprometan y comprometan el desarrollo de los ODS. A partir de la experiencia vasca, son al menos 5 esas infraestructuras. Primera infraestructura, contar con un órgano de dirección y coordinación expreso y específico para los ODS dentro de la estructura de cada gobierno, ya sea local, regional o estatal. En el Gobierno vasco en concreto se ha creado una Secretaría General para la Agenda 2030 ubicada en la Presidencia del Gobierno. Una segunda infraestructura, contar con un documento de planificación estratégica de toda la legislatura que cuente con principios, objetivos, criterios, calendario, plan de actuación, evaluación anual del cumplimiento de objetivos, etc. Tercera infraestructura, contar con un panel de indicadores propio y adaptado a la propia realidad que contribuya a la evaluación del cumplimiento y junto con ello elaboración de informes voluntarios de seguimiento anual. Cuarta infraestructura, configurar una estructura de gobernanza interinstitucional y social con una metodología rigurosa de funcionamiento que defina objetivos, memorias, planes de gestión anual, es decir, crear un órgano de gestión multinivel y multiactor de la Agenda 2030. En Euskadi contamos con el foro Euskadi Agenda 2030. Quinta infraestructura, impulsar un programa de divulgación y extensión social para hacer más conocida la Agenda 2030 y para compartir con la sociedad el significado de los ODS, así como su importancia y utilidad mediante campañas informativas, cursos, guías o herramientas didácticas, entre otras. Por último, este modelo de localización y gobernanza se complementa con una propuesta dirigida a la sociedad. El Gobierno vasco ha presentado la Agenda 2030 a la sociedad vasca como una propuesta de nuevo contrato social. Esta filosofía asume y desarrolla en plenitud el objetivo 17 de la Agenda 2030, alianzas para lograr los objetivos. La primera de esas alianzas es precisamente la alianza cívica local. Los ODS constituyen una oportunidad histórica de proyección universal para dotar de contenidos claros a una renovación del contrato social en un mundo cambiante y en crisis. Como saben, en Euskadi se sitúa la sede del Secretariado de la Coalición Local 2030 de Naciones Unidas. Nuestro compromiso va a ser tratar de impulsar este modelo de localización y gobernanza del que les he hablado en colaboración con Local 2030. Eskerrik asko.
Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour. Je ne peux malheureusement pas être présent avec vous aujourd'hui, mais je souhaite par cette vidéo vous réitérer l'engagement du gouvernement du Québec à atteindre les objectifs ambitieux du Programme de développement durable des Nations unies à l'horizon de 2030. Le Québec s'est récemment doté d'une nouvelle stratégie gouvernementale de développement durable, et ce jusqu'en 2028. C'est notre réponse formelle au programme. Cette stratégie tient compte du contexte global d'accélération des défis liés aux crises du climat et de la biodiversité, dont les impacts affectent notre société dans tous ses aspects. Elle prévoit une vingtaine d'objectifs stratégiques visant à favoriser un Québec plus vert, prospère et responsable. Il s'agit de la troisième stratégie de développement durable que nous mettons en œuvre. Avec celle-ci, nous comptons accélérer l'atteinte de nos objectifs en renforçant les solutions qui fonctionnent, tout en faisant preuve de leadership pour innover vers de nouvelles approches. Par exemple, les ministères et organismes du gouvernement du Québec devront dorénavant intégrer le développement durable à leur planification stratégique pour mettre en œuvre des solutions qui répondent aux besoins de leur clientèle et partenaires. Cette stratégie mise également sur la mobilisation accrue et sur la contribution active des municipalités qui sont des milieux privilégiés pour exercer un leadership au sein de leur communauté et mettre en œuvre des solutions durables à l'échelle locale. En plus de cette stratégie, plusieurs autres politiques publiques du Québec sont enlignées sur les objectifs de développement durable des Nations unies, de même que sur les principes de l'accord de Paris sur le climat et sur les cibles de l'accord de Kunming-Montréal. D'ailleurs, nous venons tout juste de créer le Fonds bleu annoncé lors de la conférence des Nations unies sur la biodiversité en décembre dernier. Celui-ci vise à financer de nouvelles mesures de protection, de restauration et de mise en valeur de l'eau au Québec. Un budget historique de 500 millions de dollars y sera consacré uniquement dans les 5 prochaines années. Ce n'est que l'un des exemples tangibles de notre engagement. Vous pouvez donc compter sur le Québec pour continuer de jouer un rôle actif dans tous les champs d'intervention prioritaires, tant en matière de protection de la biodiversité, de lutte contre les changements climatiques que de développement durable. En terminant, je remercie Region4 et la région de la Flandre de m'avoir permis de vous adresser ces quelques mots en ouverture de cet événement. Bonne rencontre.
I'd like to invite you all to take back your seats for the next segment. Okay, so welcome again. I hope you enjoyed the short break. So now I would like to invite you to take back your seats for the technical segment. In this second part, we will take a closer look to what happens on the ground at tangible projects, accelerating progress on the SDGs under review. As you are all aware, it's SDGs 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. Our first speaker now will be Ms. Deen Bovaert. She will elaborate on water and energy innovations. She is the heading of the Flemish Institute for Technology Research, VITO, and Energyville. It's a research and development department of 75 researchers in the field of energy strategies and energy and sustainability of the built environment. I'd like to invite Ms. Bovaert to the floor and welcome to the floor, please.
Thank you for your kind introduction, and also I'm very honored to be here on this Flemish Day to present some of the innovations we are working on at VITO in Flanders. We apply it in Flanders, but more and more we also apply our innovations globally, contributing to global sustainable development. Is somebody pushing the button for the slides, or? Yes, thank you. So as you know, VITO is developing, is a technological research institute. So we develop technologies and solutions in many areas. The concept of nexus thinking was already introduced by the keynote speaker this morning. As being more and more, we aim for this systemic approach, because the SDGs and the sustainability transitions stand not on by itself. You have nexus challenges where sometimes innovations or instruments can strengthen each other, but also trade-offs sometimes need to be made. And I've got a few examples of innovations we are working at VITO and applications in specific projects on the three sustainability transitions: water, energy, and food security. Next slide, please. The first example is on water. We all know that water stress is increasing rapidly due to the effects of climate change. In Flanders, due to the high population density and also the increasing use of water, water stress is really very high, even comparable to countries like Morocco, Southern Europe, and the Middle East. So that's why, next slide, please, the Flemish government recognized this sense of urgency and launched an ambitious program called the Blue Deal. And I won't go too much in detail because our partner, Flemish government, Maarten, will go more in depth on this program. But with VITO, we are involved in many of the pilots and living labs under this ambitious program. We have, for example, projects in industrial estates, in the fruit region, agricultural area, and also around the sand extraction lakes in our Campina region. In these living labs, we look at the triple water wins. We want to secure water for our economy. We want to also create benefits for nature and people and reduce the water risk. Another example from the colleagues working on water innovations, next slide please, is a cooperation we set up with the Port of Antwerp-Bruges on combining physical and digital technologies to get the bigger picture on water management. We do pilot tests to set up and evaluate water quality for reuse and cooling, and also look at alternative water resources such as brackish dock water. We created a digital twin to monitor water quality and quantities, and to make sure that the right quality of water is going for the right purposes, also based on very smart monitoring and management system. Also on the longer term, we work together with the Port of Antwerp to look at impacts of climate adaptation and how that the port can handle looking at water and salt balances and options to switch to alternative sources. Next slide, I come a bit closer to my own field and department, which is energy and sustainable cities. These are on the agenda of the high-level political forum this week, SDG 7 and SDG 11, and they are, of course, very closely linked to each other. The majority of the carbon footprint of a city is energy related, with transport and residential sector as main sectors to be decarbonized in the coming years. One of the major initiatives in Flanders, next slide please, is Energyville. This encompasses the energy research of Vito, but also 3 other research partners, 2 academic partners, 2 universities, and 2 applied research centers, Vito and IMEC. And it is based on the old coal mining sites in the eastern part of Flanders, in Genk, the Tosh site. And we are transforming this old coal mining site, which has been closed in the 80s, to a real vibrant environment for innovation on clean energy for the sustainable built environment. Our research of about 500 researchers encompasses research from new materials, like new materials for batteries or photovoltaics, over component level to building level, robotics for construction, robotics, for example, more to the system level, looking at energy strategies, energy markets, and so on. So we are based there now since 8 years and working on different applications, which I will show in a minute. Next slide. A real strategic project in this context is development of the whole site to what we call a living lab for the energy transition. The integration of many energy technologies will be the cornerstone of a future energy system. So we are developing our own site where we are based, and to a living lab where companies and other research partners can work together on developing, testing, validating new technologies in this whole ecosystem of different technologies. The living lab area encompasses the science park, but also the business park, the residential area, which is laying next to the business park, and to the north, the stadium and training facilities of a soccer club. All these environments have a different context and different challenges, but together it's a very valuable environment to test innovative solutions, how we can tackle and move towards a sustainable energy system for the built environment. One example I brought, and that's on the next slide, we are developing as well, is a digital twin for the building stock. As you might know, in Western Europe, the renovation of the built environment is a big challenge. And with this digital twin, we want to disclose all data based on, together with innovative algorithms on how to renovate houses, how to improve the energy performance of districts. We will disclose these data to all private partners involved in this challenge, also towards citizens and public entities working on the energy renovation challenge. We don't only work in Flanders with our innovations, we also apply it globally, and that's on the next slide. One of the topics we work together with many, especially African countries, is on energy access. The applications we develop, we cooperate with Flemish industries, but also local parties in different African countries. And here is an example where we cooperate with a company on small hydropower, allowing energy access in a rural area in Kenya. And this is also the type of innovations we bring globally to other countries, developing countries, mainly in Africa, but also in South America. Another example is on the next slide on NDCs. Yes, next slide. We work together with the African Union on what is called the natural determined contributions. This is the key instrument under the Paris Agreement on climate change, where countries have to monitor, report their energy and climate emissions, and also their long-term strategies to reduce the climate emissions. So together with the African Union, Vito started the NDC Support Center, where we now support more than 10 African countries in complying with the Paris Agreement and helping them to set up energy statistics, energy greenhouse gas modeling, monitoring and reporting under this framework. Last but not least, I brought an example on the next slide on our research we do on Earth observation in relation to food security. Next slide. Space is the place to know the planet. Based on remote sensing, we build intelligence and capacity on planet Earth's ecosystem, both on natural ecosystem, but also on its infrastructure. We use remote sensing data as the basis for many algorithms and work together with governments in a data-driven policy approach towards sustainability. On the next slide, there is an example on how we work together with the agro-food industry on data science and developing innovative algorithms based on remote sensing data. We have a data-driven approach and we work together in, for example, on the micro level to support seed and crop optimization, going more to the meso level where we monitor crops, monitor diseases, for example, irrigation, harvesting times, and so on. And also on the macro level, we monitor global and long-term trends such as climate change, climate adaptation, biodiversity, and so on. We develop these platforms and bring them to industry and to governments to ensure food security on the long run. Last example I brought is on natural capital accounting, also a new concept. On the next slide, please. A new concept which is gaining traction to not only measure economic wealth of a country, but also include the wealth of the environmental richness of a country. This concept is also based on remote sensing data and can be taken into account when making decisions. For example, when there is a trade-off to be made in infrastructure or reforestation, not only economic return can be taken into account, but also the return of the natural capital. We're also starting up projects in Africa which are successful to ensure that not only economic return, but also environmental return is taken into account, and remote sensing data are at the basis of this accounting. And last but not least, I want to stress the fact that we work and we stand for an integrated approach. And on the next slide, you see the GSTIC program, and Vito is the founder of the GSTIC program and the GSTIC community working on science, technology, and innovation for the Sustainable Development Goals. We bring together with other international research institutes, we bring together each year more than 1,000 participants under the broader umbrella of science, technology, and innovation for sustainable development. And together with this community building, we also managed together with the Flemish government a program, the GSTIC Climate Action Program, which supports financially dissemination and demonstration projects in the 7 themes that you see on the slide. So with this, I want to end my speech and thank the opportunity to be here with you today and present some of the innovations that we are working in Flanders, but applying globally. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leen, for sharing this very inspiring example with us. After Flanders, we now make a stop in Quebec. So I'm very happy to welcome Ms. Anne-Sophie Lapointe. She is an international affairs advisor at the Quebec Ministry of Environment, fight against climate change, wildlife and parks. She's going to speak us about the Quebec Blue Goals. I'd like to invite you to the floor.
Hi. PowerPoint presentation. I also have a USB key with my presentation. We have some issues with the PowerPoint of Ms. Anne-Sophie. So I would suggest we first move on to the Flemish example on the Blue Deal by Mr. Maarten Hens. In Flanders, a large population is inhabiting a small area. So we have now a program called the Blue Deal that aims to encourage a mindset shift. So I'd like to invite Maarten to speak us about the Blue Deal of Flanders.
I had slides as well. And I must say I was curious because in Flanders we choose the acronym Blue Deal as, let's say, an umbrella for our water policy. But I'm very curious to hear from Quebec what their blue gold was all about. So, the blue? Oh, okay. But nevertheless, I'll try to start without slides. But look, there they are. Now, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to share here with you on Flanders Day the initiatives that the Flemish government took to transform, let's say, its water policy in all its aspects and in all its broadness. And that dates back to the summer of 2020, when the Flemish government launched its Blue Deal. And during the next 10 minutes, I'll share with you, or I'll explain, or take you on a journey what the Blue Deal is all about and how Flanders sees its Blue Deal as its implementation of the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. The next slide, please. What is that water in Flanders? The previous speaker already indicated of it or pointed at it. We have issues in Flanders with, let's say, our water availability. Although, let's say, we have a temperate climate, we have about 900 millimeters of precipitation a year. Nevertheless, we have a very high, what is called in a technical term, a high water stress. And that's the ratio between, let's say, the water we extract, we use every year versus the water that is available to us or to Flanders from, let's say, renewable resources. And that has to do with a number of factors. Basically, we have only two rivers that go through Flanders, but there are a few other factors. We have a high population density, as Elizabeth pointed out already. We have a high degree of soil sealing, and we have organized previously, let's say, our water management, basically to get all the water or the excess water as fast as possible to the sea. And that makes we have, let's say, a high or very little water available per capita in Flanders. As such, that hadn't been a problem, but with climate change, and that was pointed out already by a few of the previous speakers before the break, climate change puts kind of a turbo on that system. And in particular, we have experienced over the previous year a number of serious drought spells facing us with increased water scarcity. And so it's both, let's say, the characteristics of seaweed surface and climate change that both lead to an increased risk of inundations, so of excess water, as to water scarcity during, let's say, summer period, especially during, let's say, late summer, August, September is pretty risky period, as we saw, for instance, last year. Yep, the next slide. So what we've seen out of the last 6 years, I think 5 of them, we experienced prolonged periods of severe drought. There was only one wet year, that was 2022. In 2023, we just came out of, let's say, more than a 30 or a plus 30-day period of drought again. And that is really felt both by agriculture, by nature, by industry, by water supplies to families and to households, and also through, let's say, all the management of our navigable rivers and canals, where we have had to imply, let's say, restrictions on the capacity that ships could carry and so on. So over the past 6 years, basically, we have had a serious wake-up call in Flanders that the weather and climate change is pushing our water system to its limits, and that led the Flemish government to take the initiative or to launch the Blue Deal in 2022. Next slides, in 2020. Sorry. Okay, what is the Blue Deal and why? I indicated already why. It's basically a structural approach and a proactive approach to tackle drought and flooding risk in Flanders. So to reduce both the risk of water scarcity and of excess water of flooding in Flanders. And we shifted from, let's say, a reactive approach in our water system or in our water policy to a proactive approach. And we do it on a structural way. A bit water management was done at very small watershed scale or a parcel scale. And now we really do it at a much larger and integrated way. It's all meant to increase, let's say, the robustness and the climate robustness of the water system And so it's to prevent water scarcity, it's to prevent or to control the flooding risks. And it is, let's say, as indicated when I started, it is the implementation in Flanders of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, especially in relation to goal number 6. Next slide, please. It's a systemic approach, so it's we take integrated view, and it is encompassing in a sense that it's both aimed at our water management and the broader landscape, as well as, let's say, the way we use water by industries, by households, by agriculture. So it's both basically, it wants to increase the circularity of our water use efficiency, as well as the way we use and manage water in the broader landscape. And a central, for the first thing, the centerpiece is basically we strongly use nature-based solutions to alter the way we manage our water in the broader landscape, and from the more efficient water use, as was indicated by the people of Vito, by Leen, as well waterproof, let's say we use there, or looking for ways to increase the way we use water in industries, in agriculture, in households, etc. Next slide. That's what it is. How do we do it from the Belgian government? Yeah, we want to stimulate, let's say, innovation in the water system. We want to do it with local authorities, with all stakeholders. So we want to do it in a broad partnership. And for that, the Flemish government has, since 21, invested over €500 million extra in the Blue Deal, basically to kickstart that transformation of our water system. And so we do investments ourselves, and the Flemish government itself. Think the Flemish Environment Agency in river renovation programs. We support local investments and innovative partnerships. We support investments in R&D, as was highlighted by the Vito presentation as well. And we take a fourth route, which is that we also are in the process of revising the whole water policy and regulations that we have in place in Flanders. So it's an investment program, it's to stimulate innovative approaches, and it's a regulating approach. That's basically 3 elements of the Blue Deal, of our Blue Deal. Next slide, please. So as indicated, we have invested, or the Flemish government has invested already over €500 million over the past couple of years. It's basically strong, it's divided over 3 components. A huge or an important component is so-called wetland restoration. So as I said, nature-based solutions. We want to store water in the landscape upstream in the watersheds, and therefore we use that wetland restoration, which also is part of our climate adaptation policy, which is also part of our Natura 2000 policy. So it's a nexus approach from that point of view. So it's not only SDGs, it's not only water policy, it's as well climate policy, climate adaptation policy, carbon storage. It's as well nature policy. So that's one pillar. The second pillar is to increase water storage, water infiltration in the wider countryside, in the wider landscape. We label that with the term blue-green infrastructure, nature-based solutions. So that's where we look in particular at water management at farm scale, at landscape level scale. So how to increase water availability for farming practices, how to increase water infiltration, etc. And a third pillar is then water use efficiency in the built-up environment. And basically, the €500 million is spread over those 3 pillars as indicated here. A lot of this money comes from the post-COVID relance packages that are also supported by the European Union, by the RRF facility. Next slide, please. Just to indicate 2 examples here, which we do from the Flemish government itself. This is the innovative partnership to increase water availability, water use efficiencies by farmers. It's called the Water Landscape Project. There will be a movie on display during the reception in which a number of concrete projects for this project will be on display. So I'll don't spend too much words here on it. A second example of this portion, next slide, is in the build-up environment where we invest in or support local communities and local partnerships to invest in green-blue infrastructure. Also from these examples are included in the movie clip afterwards. Next slide. But one of the key messages that I want to give to this audience here is a bit the Nexus ID, and that the Blue Deal, it delivers multiple benefits. It's not just about water, but it also through wetland restorations, it fosters climate mitigation, it increases carbon storage, so it's good for adaptation, mitigation, and that's the wetland restoration theme. Next slide. Also in the wider countryside, it delivers those benefits through investing in green-blue infrastructure. It's landscape strengthening, it increases biodiversity. It is greening of the environment people live in. And the next slide, it's then for the build-up environment. Also there, those nature-based approach boosts build-up areas. It increases or it decreases the risk of heat stress during summer. It increases, let's say, the environment in our cities and in our build-up areas. And so that's a number of projects that we support from the Flemish government. Next slide. We do the same, let's say, for industry and agriculture. There we put our money, let's say, in both the innovation as in a number of pilot projects, both industrial and agricultural, to increase water use efficiency, to increase, let's say, the circular use of water and so on. Next slide. It's where the Blue Deal started basically as an investment program in the slipstream of the post-COVID relance. It is now being transformed into an overarching system approach, which is structurally embedded in our water policy. That's very important. And the Flemish government also wants to use the Blue Deal as a lever to increase water system robustness, or to increase awareness about the robustness or the need for robust water systems EU-wide during the EU presidency next year in Belgium. So that's basically the look forward. So it comes a structural approach in Flanders. Flanders has the ambition basically to spread the word about the Blue Deal, or to use the Blue Deal as an example of how countries and regions can strengthen and come to a more robust water system that is climate proof, and that helps to address the or to realize the 2030 agenda for sustainable development. Last slide is just a thank you slide and link where you can find more information about concrete projects in the Blue Deal that's indicated here. And as said, there is also a movie on display here later on during the reception. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin. I believe that's what they call today, like water diplomacy. We give the slides for Ms. Anne-Sophie a second chance. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I'd like to invite you now to talk about the Blue Fund of Quebec.
So hi again, part 2. So yes, I'm really pleased to be here representing the government of Quebec. And I wanted to thank you, the region of Flanders and Regions4 for this great opportunity. Oh, that works. Great. So today I'm going to present you the Blue Fund, which has been recently put in place, and it aims to protect Quebec water. Next slide, please. So First, I just wanted to do a quick overview of Quebec government sustainable development strategy, which has been launched recently, and then I'm going to go into details and present the blue found. Next slide. And next slide, there is like a, okay, thanks. I just wanted to I just wanted to locate you Quebec. For those who don't know where it is, it's approximately 8 hours, an 8 hours ride up north. It's in Canada. And here you see a bigger picture of the map. So you see that we have many lakes and rivers to protect because 10% of Quebec territory is covered by fresh water. And you see here also there is the St. Lawrence River. It remains Canada's most important commercial waterway. It's a source of electrical power, and it's also a natural beauty of our landscape. Next slide, please. So yeah, our sustainable development strategy aims to incorporate sustainable development into all spheres of government actions. It involves more than 110 government ministries and agencies which have to produce a sustainable development action plan. It has 5 main orientations. So make Quebec a center of innovation and excellence in the green and responsible economy, taking action for nature and health, encouraging everyone to participate in sustainable development of Quebec, developing sustainable communities, and finally ensure that the state supports innovation through practices. Next slide. So the strategy is a direct contribution to the international agenda. It's the formal response of the government of Quebec to the United Nations 2030 agenda for the sustainable development. And it's also aligned with the principle of the Paris Agreement, as well as the targets of the Kunming Montreal GBF, which has been adopted in Montreal last December. Next slide. So yeah, the Quebec Blue Fund has been announced by our Premier, François Legault, during COP15 last December in Montreal. And he said that he plans to significantly increase the fees charged to companies that extract fresh and underground water in the province. So he proposed the creation of a blue fund that by 2026 could reach $150 Canadian million annually, and it would finance projects to protect the province's water resources. Next slide. Yeah, I just wanted to show you a little quote that is quite impressive that he said during his speech, which is 25% of the planet's fresh water runs through the St. Lawrence River, which is quite a lot when you think about it. That's why it's important to protect our lakes and rivers and the St. Lawrence River, of course. Next slide. So yeah, the Blue Fund then, the bill was officially sanctioned on June 9, and it came into force just like 10 days ago on July 1st. So it's really fresh. It has 2 main goals. So establish a fund specifically dedicated to water, financed in part by the royalties payable for water use, and also provide predictable and adequate funding for any measures the government may take to protect, restore, develop, and manage water resources. Next slide. So the measures, there will be 4 main measures that would be financed by this fund. So first, sustainable, equitable, and efficient use of water resources, better flood control and prevention. We had lots of flooding last spring in many regions of Quebec, and as you know, it won't get any better with climate change, so it's really important to prevent this problem. Better conservation also of aquatic ecosystem, and improved water governance in compliance with the government's regime established by the Water Act. So the activities financed by the fund would be divided equally among those 4 sectors. Next slide, please. And the measures financed by the Blue Fund would also finance activities, projects, or programs for knowledge acquisition, technological and social innovation, research and development, performance improvement, public mobilization, awareness raising, and education, as you know, to ensure greater public support and to encourage them to pay attention to their water consumption. They must be sensitized to those issues. And the fund would also provide financial support to municipalities and nonprofit organizations to help them achieve the fund's objectives, because as you know, they are at the front line of those problems. Next slide, please. So here I just wanted to show you an example with this table. It's a little technical, but you see here like the increase of the rate that would be effective by January 2024. So before, like the current regulation, it was $70 per millions of liters for businesses that incorporate water into their products, which was not a lot. And now it will rise to up to 150, still in Canadian, of course, Canadian $1 million. And the base rate for other production activities was $2.50 per millions of liter, and now it will rise up to $35. And it will be also increased by 2% per year. There will also be an additional charge and a cost price, which wasn't the case before. Next slide, please. Also wanted to show you the rates that would be proposed by sector of activity. So you see little examples here. For example, the paper manufacturing is the biggest water consumer. So the royalties from the paper manufacturing would be $12 million out of $30 million per year, which is quite almost the half of it. And there would also be royalties. When like the population, citizens, they often think that it's the water bottling that consumes a lot of water, but it's not necessarily the case. And so yeah, before the state was collecting $3 million per year, and now it will be 30 million. So which it's a 900% increase in royalties. And of course, the companies, some companies would like to be supported in reviewing their processes, and the state will offer support. And there will also be a disclosure of information like water withdrawal and company information, and which wasn't the case before. So it goes hand in hand with the social acceptability. Next slide, please. So finally, I just wanted to show you the Quebec Flu Fund is a concrete example for the achievement of the 2030 agenda. So of course, it's a direct link to this SDG 6, but also the SDG 9, because it's an innovative approach. It would finance projects in research and development and activities that would prevent events such as floods. And finally, SDG 11, because of national governments, cities, and other local authorities, involvement is fundamental to reach the SDGs. They are at the front line for the management of water because it's part of their jurisdictions. So the Blue Fund is a concrete example that could be replicated in many other regions or territories. So next slide. Merci. Thank you very much for this opportunity again. And if you have any other questions, you can send me an email and it will be my pleasure to answer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lapointe. And also please thank your Minister of Environment, Mr. Benoit Charette, who also contributed through the video. Many thanks from our part. Now we will move on to another tangible project on energy on the side of Catalonia. I'm very happy to introduce you to Mr. Daniel Perez, who is the first CEO of L'Energetica. It's a new public agency on energy. I'd like to pass the word to you, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. It's a pleasure for me to stay here It's perhaps one of the first presentations, international presentations that we do on Energetica. So for us, it's important to both build the project, but also let the project to be known in other regions, if it can be for any inspiration as well. Can you pass the slide, please? So why did we create Energetica? You know, there is this concept in renewable energies of guarantees of origin, which means that they certify that all the electricity that you are consuming comes from renewable energies. That's fine. Most of the governments in the world are doing that. But we thought, well, that might not be enough, because if we get, for example, if we have 50% renewable energy in a country and we get 100% renewable energy, this means that someone is getting 0% of renewable energy, so as we can have 100%. So in a way, this could be sort of greenwashing, because we are certifying, but we are excluding other people from having renewable energies. So thinking about that, we need to go one step further. We cannot do that. And what can we do? Well, let's increase the renewable energy mix. Let's increase the amount of renewable energies that we have in Catalonia. So that's what we decided to create Energetica. Its purpose is to, as I said, produce and supply green electricity to all the consumption of the Catalan government. And you will think, well, that's not too much. You know, some institutional buildings, and this must be 0.1% of the consumption, something like that. But no, it's not like that. It's 2%. The Catalan government is the biggest consumer of electricity of the country, in an industrial country. Why is it that? Because we have the train company, which consumes a lot of energy. We have infrastructure company, we have roads, and we have the blue gold, we have water. And unfortunately, as we don't have sufficient water in our rivers to supply to all our citizens and companies, what we need to do is desalination. We need to transform, because we have water. 98% of the water in the world is seawater. So what do we need to do if we have coast? Transform the seawater into usable water for our citizens and our companies. So this means desalination, and this consumes a lot of energy. This can only work with renewable energies. If we desalinate water without renewable energies, we are polluting, we are solving one problem and creating another one. So we need to do this with renewable energies. And that's why we decided to create 100% renewable public and local company to accept this challenge and to foster the promotion of renewable energies in Catalonia. Next slide, please. So, and how are we going to do that? Because we need specific projects. And for me, the success or the failure of the Energetica, it will be measured in megawatts. It will be measured in the project, in the specific projects that we do. We can set targets, we can talk about how can we achieve 100% renewable energy, but my obsession is not how can we become 100% renewable energy, is how can we become 0.1 more renewable energy every day? How can we occupy another rooftop, another place where we can generate more renewable energy, so to replace fossil fuels? And in our case, we have plenty of natural resources. We're lacking that sense in Catalonia. We have wind, we have water, and we have sun. So we will do this way. First, with wind, we already have 2 wind parks that became of our property last week. Then we have also several projects, both offshore and onshore. And even though wind takes a lot of time to get permitting, it takes between 5 and 7 years because there's measurement, that there's many things. But we will invest or co-invest in wind projects with private companies, with local communities to become owner of wind assets. Also with roofs, we need to do 500 megawatts in total. This will cover all our consumption. This is an investment of around 450 million euros, more or less. And out of these 500, 200 we can do in our rooftops. So this is good news, because 40% of our renewable development can be done without using land. So this is one of the priorities. And in fact, out of our budget of 25 million, this year we will spend 19 million out of 25 we will spend on rooftops, on building PV assets on schools, on prisons, on hospitals, and many public buildings. Then utility scale projects. We need utility scale project for the energy transition. We cannot do the energy transition only with rooftops, and we will try to use spaces which are not being used for agriculture, for example. There are many spaces, many old mines or close to roads, or there are many places that can be used for generating solar without substituting agriculture. And also we will experience some floating PV projects. And finally, with hydro, fortunately, we are not as lucky as they are in Quebec, but still we have some hydro potential. There are concessions in Catalonia. There are around 300 concessions, and 10 of them will expire within the next 10 years. So we will become the owners and the manager of these concessions. And this will allow us also to get some additional capacity for our renewable energy mix. Next slide, please. But also, I'm convinced that the energy transition is not only a question of changing one technology, one dirty technology for one clean technology. This is, of course, one of the things that the energy transition is about, but it's much more than that. Why? Because it's also taking advantage of this change to change property of the assets. In Spain, we have sort of local monopolies of energy, so this is an opportunity to generate more competition within the electricity actors. Also, it's an opportunity to get local municipalities into this energy transition process. So we have some municipalities calling us saying, look, I have a dream of a project in this area, in this estate, in this land, in this roof, but we don't have technical and economic capacities to do that. Well, Energetica comes and say, let's co-develop this project and let's co-invest and let's do this project, make this project real. Ideally, we will do this map, so a small project in every municipality. Of course, this reality then comes and says, no, this municipality is not possible because it protected this one. But as a goal, it will be something closer to this map, and this is a way also to do some redistribution of resources in our land. In the old model, we see there are big nuclear plants, big gas plants, big petrol facilities, but this is not going to be the case anymore. Renewables are by definition distributed. So this is an opportunity for every village and every area to get part of this cake, to get part of these benefits that they can get with this investment and job creation and tax revenues. And also, we will do it not leaving anyone behind. This is very important. The energy transition must also be a fair transition. Otherwise, it won't happen. And how can we do that? Taking into account vulnerable consumers. We have a commitment that part of the electricity that we generate in our installation will be allocated for free to vulnerable consumers. Why? Because the current policies of paying the last invoice, paying the invoice or helping paying the invoice, is not attacking the root of the problem. It's just going at the end of the problem and trying to pay the bill. But what we can do is not pay the final bill with all the taxes and charges and fees, but to reduce the initial amount of energy that it's consumed. Because if we reduce the initial number, then the taxes and everything will be applied on a lower number. No? So that's the idea of what we will do. We will allocate for free electricity to some vulnerable customers. And of course, we have limitations. It's 2 kilometers in the radio of 2 kilometers. This is due to Spanish regulation. We defend that this needs to be changed to 5 kilometers, but unfortunately, it has not been changed. So we can only supply to 2 kilometers radio vulnerable customers, but still there's a lot of them, unfortunately, available. So we will allocate electricity to these vulnerable customers. Last one, please. We're not the first one. We're not inventing anything. In fact, also private companies are doing that. Amazon, Google, Facebook, IKEA, they all say the criteria of additionality. So we need to create additional renewable energies. We are doing the same, so we're not inventing anything. Our challenge is to execute with all the public implications that it has, with all the red tape and everything to execute this strategy. And hopefully we will not be the last ones, because we can be also an inspiration for other regions. And I would like to highlight two of them which is Norway with Statkraft. It's the biggest renewable generator in Europe, and Hydro-Quebec, because it's the most important hydropower generator in the world. So these are two of the examples. Energetica is just a startup, a public startup, but hopefully one day will become something closer to these big and successful companies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perez, for your contribution. I wish you very good luck with the startup of this agency. I can see you put a lot of positive energy in it, so that's really good. I really would like to invite now the almost last speaker for today. It's Mr. Wim Dries. Wim Dries has been active in local politics for more than 20 years. Since 2009, he has been the mayor of Genk. We also heard about Genk by Leen, where Energyville is located. So we have the honor to have the mayor of Genk among us today. Since 2016, he has also been the president of the Association of Flemish Cities and Municipalities. It's an umbrella organization of all 300 local authorities in Flanders. Mr. Dries, I'd like to invite you to talk us about the SDG data fueling local policies in Flanders.
Thank you also from my behalf. It's very nice to be here. It's not the first time that I have been here. It's not the first time that I'm speaking in the Flanders House, but by doing this on the 11th of July, it's always nice because indeed it is a celebrating day in our region. Thank you also to the interesting elements and things that we've heard from Flanders, from Quebec, and also from Catalonia. And of course, in the first part, we also heard some very inspiring speakers, and it's always nice to learn more about what is happening around the world and what is happening in Flanders. And as you can see, the business community is clearly taking a lot of concrete actions to realize, among others, SDG 6 and 7, but also our local communities, local governments, because I believe the SDGs will be local or they won't be. 65% of all the actions that have to be taken by local governments, and believe me, we want to do so, even if it's not easy to do it every day, but it's very important that we make the change. If I look to the Agenda 2030, we started in 2015, 2016 to commit motivating our cities and municipalities to engage locally with the Agenda 2030. We also received structural funds from the Flemish government for this, which in recent years have allowed us, among other things, to organize a successful annual campaign called the Sustainable Municipality Week, to organize training days and webinars, and most recently to conduct an extensive data analysis in the context of our first Flemish SDG report. And if it comes to data, we sometimes say that we are in the blind. If you look to the GAFA companies, Google, Amazon, Facebook, and Apple, they know much more about our citizens than we do. They know much more about what is happening than we do. So finding the data is very important for us, and we are glad because in Flanders we have a lot of data that is also collected through surveys from 300 municipalities. So the Flemish government organizes a lot of data gaining, not only in the objective and in the data that we get from institutes like Vito or from other governments that is accountable for, but we also have a lot of survey data, and it's also very important to know what lives among the citizens of the cities to do so. If I look to what has VVSG, our umbrella organization, have been doing the last years, of course, in 2016 up until 2019, we worked a lot around awareness raising materials for the Agenda 2030 and disseminating inspiring thematics practices for each SDG. But the last years we have shifted. We have shifted to more action. We have shifted to develop a strategy for SDG policies, tools, and support for local SDG monitoring and reporting. And we also had the elections of 2018, and then local governments have to make a new policy plan. And the policy plan started from 2020 up until 2025. It's the policy plan that we are working right now in. And that's important. So we had the chance for the last 10 years within the SDGs to align also the policy plans for the local governments. Elections are coming again in 2024. So that's again a good way for our local governments to make their policy plans for 26 up until 2031 and to make sure that SDGs are engaged. And if I look to my own city, we have seen that in our policy plan, one of the leading horizontal themes is the SDGs. And we started from the 5 Ps to use that, and we integrated towards our complete policy plan for 2020 to 2025 to do so. And of course, if we look to this decade, it is the decade of action. If it becomes, and if we go to what is happening right now with the SDGs, we have to take action to make sure that we can make the change. And also the United Nations acknowledge that local governments are very important. We don't sit at the table yet. We heard it this morning. It's necessary, I think, that we also should sit at the table for negotiating the elements on the UN level, but it's always a discussion, as we know from the past. If we want to know what is happening, we have to monitor it. And as you can see, we have made for ourselves, what we have made is a voluntary subnational review. So we had an SDG monitor in the past, starting from 2018, 2019. We start by gaining elements, but we went to next level and we made a voluntary subnational report of review that we are also presenting together with the Belgium voluntary national review. That's also presented next week, I think, here at the High Level Political Forum. So it's important for us to have the information of the 300 municipalities. And you can look here, if you look to this slide, you can see what we have been doing. If we look to what is happening in Flanders, and we see an increasement overall, that's very important. If you look to 2014 up until now, we see that all the municipalities are going forward in integrating and also working on the SDGs to get a better result, and that is happening. But of course, if you look into the 17 SDGs, you will see that there is difference between all cities, the big cities between the smaller cities, but also what we are doing right now. If you see, by example, those 4, and they're very small, but it's the SDG 1 on poverty, 8 on fair work, 9 on industry and innovation, and 10 on inequality, you can see that overall they are increasing. But by example, and that's a hard one for Flanders, we are a very small region. It's the number 15, living on land, and we are decreasing there. And well, it's already said by Martin, and we are of course a small region that has a lot of building, that has a lot of concrete and a lot of surface that is not available for infiltration. So that's quite a challenge that we have, and we see that it's still increases every year, the space that we are using for buildings and other elements. So that's a tough one, but we're working on it. And you can also see that for 12 and 16, we have to take care in that. If I look to the 13 largest cities, and Genk is one of those 13 cities, we see that, of course, they have some problems other cities don't have. If I look to my city, by example, we have a very low income in Genk. So you have, of course, difficulties because people don't have the same income that is in the average in Flanders. But again, if we then look to some other SDGs, you see that those cities are front runners if it comes to how should I say, urban agriculture, or if it comes to sustainable foods and if it comes to behavior and innovation, to eco-conscious behavior and innovation, we are in the lead. So you can see it's different for the average city than it is for the center cities to work on. Of course, we are trying to have in this voluntary subnational review, we are trying to inspire all our cities, and we do that by giving also very good practices, very good examples that there are in almost everywhere, because all cities, they don't have the possibilities to do everything. everything, but you can see that especially they choose one focus and they make very good examples that we want to share. Is something that we do in the umbrella organization. Sharing knowledge is very important to do so. And also, if you go to SDG 11, to give you an idea, we have more than a set of 52 indicators that we use for that SDG. It's an important one, especially also for Flanders. I think for all cities and local communities, it's an important one. And so we have a lot of survey information and other information that we can use to see how we are going on that SDG. As I was telling also that, of course, if we look to this, we are giving the information to all the municipalities personally with their own results and also with their own position. Where are they towards the average and where are they towards cities that are like them? So it's numbers that we are giving, and when we send it to all our cities and municipalities, they were very eager to have more information. There were a lot of questions. They want to know why, because you can really see what is happening in your city and where you were at 2014 and where you are right now. And that, of course, is the strength of data. That, of course, is what we need to keep on focus, to keep on path, because I think we are at a crossroads today and we have to choose which way are we going. And of course, as I said, we are in the decade of action. So we have to take action to improve our position. I also have a slide. If I look to the situation of Genk, and as a mayor of Genk, I can only speak of my own city, of course. I can use other examples. But if we show that slide, maybe. We'll see if it will come. It's that one, yes. So here you can see the city of Genk. If you look to the horizontal axis, you can see that here we had minus 20, 23. Here we have an axle that goes to minus 15. So you can see that we had a shift of a lot of SDGs that were less than min 5 to min 20, and they have increased to the main from the main. So we've had an overall increase. That's important. We went better in our city if we look to the SDGs. But by example, if I can look to SDG 7, by example, that we have here we were, if we look to other cities of the size of Genk and the view of Genk, we were at the middle. Now you can see that we have increased. It's important, I think, around energy. We have done quite some things together with the industry. We have a lot of wind energy that has been created, also solar energy that we have done. But if I look to at the Covenant of Mayors, we had to make sure that we had a decrease of 20% of carbon dioxide up until 2020. And we also achieved that number. So we went down 21% of carbon dioxide in our city, not only in industry. We had a lot of progression in industry, but we also had a lot of progression in households by restoring homes and by making sure that they will use less energy than today. So that's important. If I look to, by example, number 2, that's also an important SDG. For Genk, it's an important SDG. You can see that we were here under our average, but also under not at the distance from the main. We were also in the negative. Today you can see that we went better that we had an increase if you look to the distance from the main, but that we had a decrease if you look to cities like Genk. We went behind there. So we still have to work, and you can see that it was said this morning also here in the presentations. It all works on each other. So it's combined. You cannot take one SDG. You have to look to the overall implications of all the SDGs together. And that is why we are trying to work on in Genk. So I want to end this presentation by saying, please read our report or subnational review. We think there's a lot of information in it. We think also with Flanders that we have made a good example where you bring 300 municipalities together and where you can show, and that is also the questions that we have to other governments, please use the data, please use what we are doing, because we think by having the data, by having the reports, we can really show not only Flanders, but also our national, also to Belgium and also to Europe and of course to the UN, that we can really make the change if local governments take their responsibilities. And believe me, I think all over the world, local governments are taking the responsibility. We see that there is, the awareness is very high in Flanders, but also in Belgium by the local governments. And of course, as a mayor of a city, I believe that local governments make the difference. I know a lot of people think that we're not always trustworthy, but believe me, we are trustworthy to make the change in the SDGs, to make the change in what is happening right now. And so we still have 7 years to go. It will be a hard job to get done, but it is a necessary job to get done. And I think mayors around the world, if you look to also the Covenant of Mayors, are ready to take that challenge and are ready, together with other governments, together with industry, and together with all our people that living in our city, to make the difference. So let us do it, and then we can make the world a better place. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your inspiring speech, Mr. Dries. Indeed, all the figures and data that you master is very important for the local authorities. I think sometimes it's more encouraging to take action rather than all the negative news we sometimes have to receive. So many thanks and good luck with presenting the subnational review. Last but not least, we have a final contribution by the Port of Antwerp Bruges. It's a video. The port wants to be a sustainable port that reconciles economy, people, and climate in order to future generations to continue and enjoy prosperity and many job opportunities in the Port of Antwerp. So it's an SDG-driven port that embeds the SDGs in all of its operations. So I invite you to watch the video with an overview of the ambitions of the Port of Antwerp Bruges.
Dear audience, today I stand before you to discuss one of the most pressing global agendas of our time, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These 17 goals serve as a roadmap for a better future, aiming to address the world's most urgent challenges and ensure a more sustainable and equitable world for all. At Port of Antwerp Bruges, we have incorporated the SDGs in our business strategy as guiding principles and implemented them in our daily operations. All 17 SDGs are from utmost importance to us, but especially we aim for Olympic gold in 5 domains. Number 3, good health and well-being is an important one to us. Number 8, decent work and economic growth. Also number 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. As is number 11, sustainable cities and communities. And to end SDG number 13, climate action. Obviously, the most transversal SDG that enables the realization of all others. SDG number 17, partnerships for the goals, is an integrated part of how we work in our port, together with like-minded partners. By embracing the SDGs, the Port Authority not only is able to position itself as a pioneer in sustainable development, we are contributing in practical terms to a more sustainable and resilient maritime industry and a better future for all. First and foremost, the SDGs are to be considered as a call to action. Ports have a significant environmental impact due to their operations, emissions, waste generation, and the potential disruption to natural ecosystems. On the other hand, Port of Antwerp-Bruges plays a crucial role in the local community, providing employment opportunities and contributing to Belgium's and Flanders' economic growth and prosperity. By implementing the SDGs in our daily way of working, we let value create value, which results in a long-term sustainable value. Let me share some examples with you. Port of Antwerp-Bruges has always been a testing ground and place of innovation. Together with the port community and our partners, we turn today's challenges such as energy transition, digitalization, and mobility into sustainable solutions that make our port future-proof, more efficient, safer, and smarter. A smart port reconciles economy, climate, and people. Smart technologies and digitization play a key role. Therefore, Port of Antwerp-Bruges has developed a digital twin. It is a digital copy of the port area in which real-time information is integrated. Which ships are on which blocks and docks? Are all of the live buoys where they should be? How much energy are our wind turbines producing at this moment? How is the air quality? By real-time monitoring of the port environment with sensors and intelligence cameras, our port officers are informed instantly and able to react directly to what is going on in the port. Do you wonder too how it looks like? Watch this. Have a look at a short movie that explains how our digital twin is working.
Hello, I'm Apika, your virtual assistant monitoring all activities in the Port of Antwerp-Bruges and providing real-time information on weather conditions, air quality, shipping traffic, bridges and locks. Thanks to a digital network of drones, cameras and sensors inspired by the 5 human senses, I can tell what is happening in the port 24/7. In case of an incident, I react and send an alert to a safety officer. When an INOS detects a harmful smell, they can examine the cause and intervene if needed. Autonomous drones and patrol vessels are always on standby to take a closer look at the situation. I help to make activities more efficient and precise. Is a barge berthed correctly and connected to shore power? How much energy are our wind turbines producing? And are all lifebuoys hanging in their closets? Soon, I will even be able to predict the future. By combining historic data and artificial intelligence, I can detect potential congestion and dangerous situations before they occur, enabling safe, smooth and sustainable traffic in the port. In this way, I'm helping Port of Antwerp-Bruges become the port of the future.
The Antwerp Port Platform hosts Europe's largest chemical cluster. This industry produces a massive amount of heat. Together with the city of Antwerp, remember SDG 17, we are committed to limit the loss of industrial residual heat by using it somewhere else. We have created the first open exit heat network in Belgium. More than 3,000 households, 7 schools, and several public buildings will receive their heat from a heat network fed by the residual heat from the ports industry. Let me give you another example. Close to our hearts and in the center of maritime activities, water. Obviously, water is the most important asset of a port and its environment. And that is why Port of Antwerp-Bruges invests in the water quality of the River Scheldt and its docks. We clean the riverbed by dredging contaminated sludge. We monitor the water quality with digital sensors and clean the water surface where necessary. This is how we contribute to protecting and encouraging life in one of the main rivers of our region. Next to that, also education plays a pivotal role in achieving the SDGs. By empowering individuals with knowledge and skills, we can foster sustainable development at both local and global levels. Therefore, we have created two subsidiaries, Port of Antwerp-Bruges International and APEC. Port of Antwerp-Bruges International first, it strengthens ports and terminals in third countries through consultancy services, management solutions, and investment projects. Next to that, APEC is the Ports Training Center, offering short-term seminars to professionals from all over the world. Meanwhile, we have nearly 20,000 alumni across the planet that have followed APEC seminars in which knowledge and best practices were exchanged on a wide variety of port-related themes and issues. Participants are also exposed to the Ports Endeavour game, which was co-developed with the International Association of Ports and Harbors and challenges players to apply the SDGs in development of port projects. I could give you dozens of other concrete applications and examples and projects of which Port of Antwerp-Bruges is working. But let me finish with the major lessons learned since we started and adopted the SDGs as guiding principles. Nothing beats the power of collaboration. The success of the Sustainable Development Goals depends on the collective effort of governments, civil society, the private sector, individuals like you and me. By working together, we can create transformative change and pave the way for a brighter future. The SDGs are a tool to develop a shared vision among partners and provide a roadmap for a better world. They remind us of our collective responsibility to safeguard the planet while improving the lives of people everywhere. Let us embrace these goals, advocate together for their implementation, and work tirelessly to achieve them. I thank you all.
This time is to close. But before we close, a big word of thanks for the whole delegation coming from Flanders, quite a few of us who are here. A big word of thanks to Elizabeth as well for doing all the hard work. And then a big word of thanks to all the speakers. Three practical things. For all the speakers, before you leave, come and see me because we have some chocolates for you. In case you get lost in New York. Secondly, may I ask you, because we're going to offer some food and some reception. I mean, it is after all a festive day for us today, so don't run away yet. But if I may ask to maybe just when you get up, move your chairs towards the window, then we can bring in some cocktail tables so that's more elegant and more practical to have something to eat and to drink. And thank you very much.